Hey Rob, where are you zooming from? Atlanta? Los Angeles?
No, Coolangatta.
Oh, Coolangatta. Very nice. How's it over there?
Oh, it's great. This where I was expecting to be from Saturday onwards, but it obviously isn't going to happen this year.
No. Yep, Narelle, thank you. We'll keep our conversation general.
Queensland might be about the only place we can get to in the near future, Rob.
Yeah. Trish mentioned yesterday she saw on TV that there was a bit of a war going on because Coolangatta is right on the border with New South Wales, and people were trying to get across and back, and where we stay is only a stone's throw from the border itself.
Yeah, literally those roads, you can't tell where the different one stops and the other starts.
Exactly. It's confusing when daylight savings on, because on one side of the street it's an hour later than the other.
They used to be good when we stayed there, because you could nip across the border for another hour's worth of liquor store shopping or vice versa. They used to have big, when I was a kid, big stops, police roadblocks on the bridge going across the Tweed River where they searched your car for fruit.
That's right. They still have the sign up there which says about taking inappropriate goods into New South Wales, but it's pretty vague now in terms of anyone stopping you from doing anything.
All right, how many we got here? 1, 2, 3. What's quorum? 8, is it? 7?
Oh, you've got 2, Mongai, haven't you? So it must be 8.
I can confirm that quorum is 8.
Yeah. 8, okay, thanks. 1, 2. Now, Mark, you're taking an observational role, so Becca, Mark technically isn't part of the quorum, is that right?
He's technically part of the quorum, but I think we've got quorum now anyway.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm just wanting to confirm that. Surely Mark's now a full participant of the committee.
Yeah. The discussion we've had with Mark, governance, and Paula is, yes, he is technically a member of the committee because he's a sworn-in councillor. But with your leave, guys, he's just as happy to play an observational role with, being able to ask questions and things like that, because he hasn't had any access to the briefings and the background material. And while we've gone over the agenda with him, he's quite comfortable just sort of sitting watching today. So if he doesn't vote, it's not counted as an abstention. So
can I just suggest that he is a full member of this committee and a full member of council, and with respect, if Councillor Mark II, I think that I'm going to get my names right, Councillor Mark II wants to just abstain or step away, that's obviously his call.
Yep.
I can confirm, councillors, that we've had this conversation with Councillor Donovan, and you can obviously speak for yourself, Councillor Donovan, but we've talked about that because he's so new and the swearing-in ceremony and the induction period is still occurring. He is definitely a full member of the community committee. He can take part if he wishes. However, because of exactly what Councillor Bunting's just described, he has decided to just participate by watching and observing today.
Okay, well, if that's of his choice, then that's fine. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm very relaxed about it. Mark, don't be shy about asking any question. There's no dumb questions, believe me. I've set the bar nice and low for that. So
you certainly have, Mr. Chair.
But chances are, if you ask what you think is a dumb question, you'll see a look of relief on other people's faces, because they were probably thinking the same thing as well. So, it's all to be encouraged. It's a safe environment, and you're most welcome here, mate. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Nō reira, haere mai, kia ora koutou. Kia piki na wai, kia hiki na waka. When the water goes up, all boats go up. So today I'm hoping with the good work of this community, we're going to come up with some really fantastic outcomes for this great community that we serve today. So I'd like to welcome Todd Nashewitz from the interfaith community to open up in his particular way. Kia ora, Todd, welcome.
Kia ora, thanks, Mark. My name's Todd Nakowitz, and I represent the Waikato Jewish Association for today's interfaith prayer. Jews have a long tradition of praying for the welfare of the society in which they live. The earliest indication of this tradition comes from the prophet Jeremiah, who prophesied during the period of the first Jewish diaspora during Babylonian exile in the years 587 to 538 BCE. Living for the first time in a country which was not their own, they were counseled by Jeremiah to pray for its success and prosperity. This is a quick prayer from Jeremiah 29:7. Seek the welfare of the city and pray to God on its behalf, for in its prosperity you too shall prosper. Since the 14th century, most Jewish prayer books have contained a prayer for good governance, in keeping with Jeremiah's injunction. There were certainly times and places when Jews lived under governments which had policies towards Jews which would have made it very difficult, if not impossible, for them to recite these prayers. We in New Zealand today are blessed to live in a democratic society which respects the rights of religious minorities. This is the prayer for good governance. Beloved God, we invoke your blessing upon this country, Aotearoa, New Zealand, and on its government and leaders. Guide them that they may administer all affairs of state in justice and righteousness. May peace and security, happiness, prosperity, and freedom forever abide among us. Unite the inhabitants of New Zealand in all its diversity. Safeguard our ideals and institutions from hatred and bigotry, so that the people of this land may fulfill the vision of the prophets. Let us give thanks for our democracy in New Zealand and for the freedom to worship and believe as we choose, no matter what those beliefs may be. On behalf of all humanity, help our elected officials and all in positions of power and authority to govern wisely and for the common good of all. Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd. Great to have you here, mate. You're welcome to sit and watch the rest of the meeting if you like, because it's public.
Thank you.
But I appreciate the work you and the interfaith community are doing and coming into these things. It's adding some lovely flavour. Kia ora. All right, team, so we'll declare the meeting open. Moving on to apologies. Now, I had an apology from Councillor O'Leary, but it's great to have you back. Traffins has yet again been postponed. God. So you're here for the meeting, which is great. We have apologies from Mayor Southgate and Councillor Naidu Rolfe, sort of for in and out appearances. Is that right, Kesh? Paula? Yep.
Yes, please. Just with the kids, in and out.
Yeah, not a problem at all.
Thank
No,
you.
great. And is there any other apologies?
I'm going to be in and out mother responsibilities.
Okay. Thanks, Tapora. Yeah. That's great. And that's pretty much all we've got here. That's absolutely fine. All right. And we don't need to move that, do we? No. So we move on to the confirmation of the...
We do need to move it. Sorry, Councillor
Bunting. I beg your pardon. Sorry. Okay, I'll move the apologies to be accepted. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thanks, Ewan. Appreciate that. Confirmation of the agenda. You'll notice, has everyone been sent out the running sheet now? It's pretty much as the agenda reads, although we are moving the Central City Strategy update to the last part of this meeting, which shouldn't be an all-day one. The reason is we've got an external speaker who's wanted this to be as late as possible. So with your leave, we'll move item 9 to after the General Manager's report. I'll move that the agenda be confirmed. Do we have a seconder for that? Thanks, Kesh. All right. All those in favour? Against? Carried. All right. Do we have any declarations of interest? None? Great. Public forum. We don't seem to have anyone in the public forum, do we, Governance?
No.
Today? No. Good. Okay. Now, today being an audio-visual meeting, you'll notice a few slight adjustments in here. what I've done to keep the flavour live is I've made as many backgrounds as I possibly can to give a nod to each of the committee members. So, Dave, this one's for you. All right. If I'll be thinking of you, and that one's up there. Angela, you might have seen a sneak preview of one I've got there for you, which is cool. And you'll see various ones through the day. But the most important one I'm very excited about is the following one, because we have an issue with Zoom in that you can't actually tell how long people are going to speak. But no, now you can. So when there's a debate speech on today, keep this as a rough guide. We have a timer, okay, which should make a noise at 3 minutes. If you could roughly keep an eye on that, I'll get my head out of the way so we can keep our speeches to some sort of length and we can all sort of get into the rest of their day at the end of it, okay? So some of the, you'll find some different backgrounds as they go on. Right. So no, we won't use that one yet. We'll go to that one. Okay. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Yeah, just a question, Chair. Was there any particular elected member that spurred you to add this piece of technology to the meeting?
No, it was just a general concern for the welfare of the entire group, Jeff. But
excellent!
Thank you for your concern. All right, so we're moving on to the public forum done. Confirmation of the community minutes. Do we have a mover that they be confirmed? Thank you, Sarah. And Kesh, would you second that? Yep. Any questions? Jeff, your hand's still up, but is it an old hand? Okay.
It's an old hand.
Old hand, Jeff. Okay. And that's all right. Well, in that case, it's been moved and seconded. A show of hands for the confirmation of the previous minutes. Anyone against?
Motion carried. Yep, motion carried unanimously.
Legend. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm back.
Oh, hi, Paula.
Hi.
Oh, Paula, sorry, Angela, you've got your hand up.
Mr. Chair, I wonder some feedback came in at my last committee meeting from someone who was watching online, the 3 people that watch. No, it wasn't Mum. Just saying it was quite hard to follow along. And I wonder if also we're obviously still online, but also on Zoom, if you could do just a really quick, I don't know, plain English intro of the item and what the decision might be just for viewers.
Yep. Great idea.
I think if we can try and all start doing that, it'll be much easier for everyone watching.
Yeah, no, that's a very good idea, and I'll definitely carry that on from here. Thank you.
Great.
Appreciate that. And please pass our regards on to your mum. That's awesome. Okay, thank you. All right. Well, so the previous minutes have been confirmed. Moving on to the chair's report. Now, the chair's report is on page 6. So this is a report from me to the committee. Just speaking to that report, first of all, I want to pay tribute to our incredible staff who you'll all agree have been doing a magnificent job out there during these tough times. A lot of them have been wearing the big PPE gear, and they've been taping up playgrounds and contending with the public. And you'll all agree it's been a bit of a grumpy lockdown. And so they've been front-facing, a lot of them. So I just, on behalf of this committee, want to thank the fantastic staff, in particular the Parks team. And I think they've done a really, really great job. So I'd like that to be noted. There's a part in here about the cemetery discussion, which I understand, Mayor Paula, you want to move this. So I'll get you to speak about that shortly. Yes, we had a visit from Mervyn Singman and his team from the Ministry of Ethnic Communities, and we had a really fruitful discussion with them one Saturday morning recently. Wonderful people, and they have a real appetite to work very closely with us, which is cool. In November, would like to take this community on the road right out into the community. So we will be, all things being well, lockdown wise, we'll be holding the November community committee meeting at the Western Community Centre. So it'll be a little bit raw, a little bit different. And as I've said there, the AV isn't as guaranteed as it is here. So it really would be great if you could put that date aside to make it along in person on that day. But we'll have a lot of fun out there, and we'll, taking these committees out there is a really great way of showing people what we do without them having to necessarily come in. And thanks to Kesh and the team. And Kesh, I think you're doing a great job with your jabbing. I think you're doing just the amount of work you're putting in with that and this is phenomenal. So that is my report. Are there any questions or comments? Mayor Paula.
Are you onto comments or into questions? Because
we'll go to questions if we could.
I'll lower my hand and then come back for comment. Thanks.
Okay. All right. There being no questions anyway. Paula, you're moving it. I'll second it if you like.
I'm happy to move. And just a few comments. Thank you again. I absolutely second your thanks of staff. Our staff are out and about doing all kinds of things that people are unaware of, keeping the city moving. And it's not just those that we see on Zoom behind the screen, but it's those, like you say, that are out there looking after our core infrastructure, our water services, our drains, our parks, our places, keeping our animals well at the zoo and all of those things that just carry on. So I'm really grateful for that. Kesh, you're a star. We all think you're wonderful and don't know how you do it with a young family, a job and a counsellor. Thank you so much. But the one thing I wanted to talk about particularly was the cemetery, Mark, in terms of, and you haven't talked about the safety thing here, have you? No.
No, that's another item.
That's another item. So the cemetery, we know we've had some feedback on while it has been limited to a few people who feel very strongly and have brought some high profile attention to the cemetery. I have a lot of sympathy for the view they take. Cemeteries are sacred places. I think people bought those plots a long time ago before they understood what a grass cemetery was perceived to mean to the council, and probably were unaware that their plots may overgrow and only be looked after if they were asked. So I'm very much a fan of looking at what the resource is and finding the most cost-effective way to lift the standard of how we look after the cemetery. I'll just make one other point in terms of those grass plots, and I've got family out there too. There was no choice back in the day. There wasn't a choice to have the upright cemeteries. There wasn't the natural cemetery, the natural plots where you could have a tree planted. The only other choices was the children and the RSA. So I think to have no choice and then to find out that because of having no choice, your plot may not be looked after is not right in my view. So I'm looking for some really good ways to address this, but I do accept that it didn't come up in the annual plan, long-term plan, and it needs to go to the annual plan so that we can give staff the time to do a good job on it and to tell us exactly how much this will cost. So that's my view on that one. Thank you for being able to share it.
No, thanks, Paula. Appreciate that, Mayor Paula. Councillor Kesh, you have hang on a minute, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Hang on a minute, hang on, and go.
I won't need the 3 minutes, Mark, but I just wanted to echo what you said in terms of thanking the community staff for what they're doing during lockdown. I know it comes with many challenges. Being an essential worker, you leave home every day putting yourself and your family at risk, and that's not taken lightly. So thank you to the team. I also wanted to add a comment about Mervyn Singham's visit and that how positive it was. There were lots of discussions about collaborating not only with projects but also with funding. So there's a lot of conversation to be had in terms of how council joins forces with the Ministry of Ethnic Communities. And I just wanted to say that Chair Mark, you always acknowledge me and my hard work and the team, but not very often do we get to thank you. I know how many calls you take per day and how hard you work for this committee. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of this committee as well.
Thank you. I was about to start the timer again when you started talking like that. Great. Any other comments, debate? All right. I don't need to wrap it up. I've talked enough on it. So, all right. It's been moved by Mayor Paula, seconded by myself. The motion you see in there is about that we accept the report And with regards the cemetery, that we would say we bring this back to the request staff to go back to the council with a proposal to provide a higher standard of maintenance in the Maple, Beech, Cherry and Magnolia Lawns parts of the Hamilton Cemetery at Newstead, with costs and options on how these costs may be met in time for consideration as part of the next annual plan development process. So debate has been had. So can I have a show of hands of all those in favour, please? Anyone against?
Carried unanimously.
Thank you, team. Great. All right, moving on to the Hamilton Aged Friendly Plan now. So in Diligent, this is page 17. Now, what we're after here as a committee is the endorsement from this committee of the community-led Hamilton Age Friendly Plan. Now, it's a plan and a group of people of whom we are exceptionally proud. And Dame Peggy, we're lucky to have your services and lucky to have you in the meeting as well, Dame Peggy. So you're more than welcome here. It'll be led by Nick Chester. We're being asked to receive the report, endorse the Hamilton Age Friendly Plan, and note that progress on the plan will be reported annually beginning in August of next year. So, Nick, are you in the room? Are you?
Yes, I am.
This one? Okay, I'll hand it over to you, mate. Kesh, you've still got your hand up too.
Thank you very much, Chair Mark. Morena koutou. It's great to be here to present the second version of the age-friendly plan. It's been a lot of work behind the scenes to get to a point where we've got version 2 of the plan, and you know there's a great group behind this, the steering group who's put this together and done a lot of the work behind the scenes. Before I pass over to Dame Peggy, because I know she's got a few comments she'd like to make, I just wanted to just reiterate a couple of things for elected members. So just a reminder that this plan is a review and an update of the initial 2018 to 21 age-friendly plan that was endorsed by Council in February 2018. And this led to Hamilton being the first city in New Zealand to be included in the World Health Organization's age-friendly global network of cities and communities. We're still one of only 2 cities in New Zealand that's in that network at the moment. The plan's different to other strategies and plans that are presented to you as elected members in that it's community-led. It's been developed by a steering group of experts who are familiar with issues facing older people in Hamilton. And it's supported by a large number of agencies and community organisations, and you'll see in some of the actions that a lot of them are led by community groups, agencies that are not council. So it's very much a community-led strategy and plan, this one. So the steering group's seeking endorsement of the plan and is committing to regular reporting back to council on progress so that you're comfortable with how things are tracking, and you've got an opportunity to provide comments as we go forwards. I think that's all I needed to say, and I'll just hand over to Peggy. I know she's there on Zoom. I know she'll have a few comments she'd like to add before we open up for any questions that you may have.
So good morning. Am I there? I can't see myself, but I assume you can.
Yeah, we can't see you, but we can hear you, Peggy.
Okay, I don't know what to do to, oh, wait a minute. Start my video. I have to be invited. Thank you.
Hello.
Okay. So greetings to you all. Some of you I've met in this situation before, so you know about Hamilton's Age Friendly, and a special greeting to Mark Donovan, the newest member. I guess I have to say to you, Mark, that you too will age in this environment. It particularly may be. I'm here to remind you that we are all growing older, and to ensure that you personally are improving with age. And with it, so is Hamilton City. Now, as Nick has just said, this is our second report written by a group of volunteers, most of them retired and expert in the area, some in senior positions in the organisations which are concerned with older people. And like Nick, I would like to record a big thank you to them, and especially to Nick himself, Nick Chester from the Hamilton City Council, who has been with the Age Friendly Hamilton project, I'm not quite sure how many years, but a very long time. Thank you, Nick. You are the face of Age Friendly to many people in Hamilton. Now, I'd like to focus as briefly as possible on our two goals, and I'm going to add in a little story. The plan has two goals. You will have on the internet. Hopefully, there it is. But if you just want to look at one page, you look at page 16. And there you will have our first goal, which is to raise the awareness of the increasing numbers of older people in Hamilton. A brief summary, there are about 20,000 older people. They are over the age of 65 in Hamilton, and that is about 12%, 11.9% of Hamilton's population, a little bit more than 1 in 10 of our Hamilton citizens. Interestingly, we have the greatest diversity of older people in the country. 17.3%, just under 20%, let's say, of Hamiltonians are not European, Kiwi European. They are Maori, New Zealanders, Asian, or other Europeans. And that's quite interesting insofar as we have a diversity in their interests and so on. Our goal is to raise the awareness of the public to this increasing number of older people. Now, how do we measure that? Very difficult. And here's my story. I would like to suggest that New Zealand's response to the COVID pandemic gives us a good indication of the high awareness of the public here in New Zealand and in Hamilton to the place of older people. And if I may, I will go back to March, I think last year, when COVID was beginning to appear. One of the first responses of the government to the pandemic was to tell people over 70, I remember it well because I'm in that age group, to go home and stay there. And there was a considerable uproar as to the idea of simply shutting away people of a particular age group. Bad mistake. But corrected rather quickly when it was pointed out that these people were often in paid work, myself included, were the backbone of the voluntary sector, myself included, and the intergenerational link in families and communities. So instead of the older generation being, now we have the older generation being put on the priority list for vaccination. Facilities and organisations check up on them regularly, and they still do right now in the middle of the lockdown. And I would like to suggest that we in New Zealand, and in this situation, of course, in Hamilton, can be proud of the way in which we are aware of our older people in the city. We do indeed value our older people. In fact, I would suggest that nobody in this room or on this Zoom would dare to send their 85-year-old mother to the end of the vaccination queue. But it can happen in other countries. So I would like to start on a very complimentary line. You, the people in the room, your predecessors and our steering group have done very well for the older people in Hamilton. The second goal is to empower the community to take actions to improve the lives of older people. Okay, and like Nick, I would like to acknowledge the huge role of the organisations and groups in Hamilton, and two in particular, the Rauawa Kaumatua Charitable Trust and Age Concern. Now, both of those organisations have been in Hamilton for many decades. We also have a very up-to-date Old People's Rehabilitation Unit at the hospital, and we have a huge range of services from the disability sector. So if we look at page 16 again, you can see that the plan, just moving on from the two goals and very briefly summarising, there are 9 areas of action: transport, social participation, page 16, where we are encouraging the community to do something, all right? Usually in partnership, as Nick has said. There are 20 new projects, I think, I hope I'm right, after page 18. And they include new projects, those that are being enhanced, and also those currently. I'll just mention a couple of them briefly. On page 18, I mentioned before the buildings and Kaumatua Charitable Trust. We are encouraging them to continue with building their age-friendly and dementia centre. It's in Colombo Street. They are also supporting Kaumatua Social Enterprise Project. Go visit. Very interesting, actually. Another one is in the Hamilton City Council's area, under transport and mobility, to continue the alternative transport modes for older people. We've got a new word for you, micro-mobility. And that covers e-bikes and e-scooters and push-me-pull-yous, whatever you like. But really, the Hamilton Transport Plan needs to realise that 1 in 10 of their people are using these sorts of facilities. And the last one is an example from Age Concern, the Hamilton Libraries and SeniorNet, where they are being encouraged to improve their digital literacy among older people to use new technologies. So those 3 or 4 are just examples of projects which we have got documented in our list of projects. Right now, I would like the council to consider our plan, maybe suggest some further ideas for community partnerships, and I certainly welcome your continuing support for the steering group and the continuing expertise of the Hamilton City Council staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Nick, have you finished at this point?
Yes, happy to turn over for questions.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sure there will be some questions. Dame Peggy, thank you. I'll preempt this. There's been a fair bit of talk amongst, and really good talk too, amongst in particular councillors Angela and Sarah with regards an accessibility plan, yes, which would involve not just your community, but the disabled community, etc. Yes. Would you be interested in feeding into something like that?
Well, absolutely. And this is the disability plan from the government, okay? Mm. I was on the group that wrote that. And I noticed that Hamilton's disability policy is up for review on June next year. So, yep, so your timing is perfect.
So perhaps it would help then if we took a meeting note with your leave, Councillor Angela, that our 2 committees get together and scratch out what that would look like at its early stage.
We already have a person from disability on our group. Yeah. Okay, so that's would be helpful, John.
Councillor Mark, as you know, we're doing the refresh of Access Hamilton, and stakeholders will be part of that. That's if there's an accessibility plan or action or work stream to come out of Access Hamilton, it would fit in there. So I just don't want to duplicate yet another piece of work. Yeah, and disability certainly sector's certainly going to be involved in that Access Hamilton as well. But I'm happy to catch up to make sure we can tick that box off for them.
Oh, really good. No, that's great to know. That's brilliant. All right. Questions, Councillor Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Mark, and thanks, Dame Peggy, for the work that you and your steering committee do in enhancing and bringing to our knowledge what's going on in the sector. I do take heart from your comment that we are all improving with age. And that has to be good, not only for the whole community, but also for those sitting around our table. I've got a couple of questions. One perhaps that might be perhaps a little targeted towards Nick. On page 30, you talk about communication of the plan. And I just wonder whether we should be of a mind that we print quite a number of copies of the report and get that distributed to retirement villages, to aged concern, to grey power, to community houses. And there are a lot of informal groups of older people who meet on a regular basis, because I often hear when I go to those meetings, they don't know what's happening in the community.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Councillor Rob. I think that that's something we do need to do, is make sure we've got printed copies at key locations. The idea of the strategy on a page, which I think is on page 36 of your agenda, is that we would like to get large versions of that put into major centres, you know, our community centres where older people frequent regularly, to make sure that there's an increased understanding and knowledge that the plan actually exists. While I think there's been some really good work done on the plan in the last 3 years, I think we may have not done as much communications about what we have done. And so I think I absolutely agree with you that we need to publicise what we're doing a lot more than we have been.
And we've budgeted, we've got a reasonable budget that would help fund that. Yeah,
I would need to check in with Lance about that, but I don't think that would be a significant concern to be able to print a few copies.
Okay, that's good. And my last question is perhaps around something that I couldn't see in the report, and that is about any support being needed for the elderly around financial and budgeting advice as the needs change during retirement. And I'm not sure whether, as a result of your consultation, you got any feedback suggesting that that was an area of concern that the elderly have. And I ask that question because obviously we're all living longer, but during the period of retirement, a lot of things often change. You know, people don't stay in their home that they retired in necessarily until they pass. And so there's lots of financial decisions that often they need to make. Partners pass too. And so there's lots of decisions that need to be made during that retirement period.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I think one of the things that we had hoped if we had not been in lockdown is that we would have had Brent Nelson, the CEO of Age Concern, here, because I believe they do a little bit of that work. But what I can do is follow up with him and see what we can do around that and potentially add an action in. So I'll go and have a chat with Age Concern and see what we can do around adding another action, which is around budgeting, because I think that is probably an area that has been missed.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rob. Peggy, did you have something to add to that?
No, not really. This plan doesn't cover everything that is currently being done or is being thought about, and it will be a work in progress.
Great, thank you. Right, I've got Mangai Tapora and then Councillor Sarah. So, Tapora.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Mark. Ngā mihi nunui ki a koe, te kahurangi Dame Peggy. Kia ora, Nick. Can I just start off by saying it's really good to read how you've pulled this together and made considerations to He Pou Manawa Order. Just really good to see that there. But I wanted to ask around the iwi mana whenua engagement, because I know we've got the key players in there, which is Awa Kaumātua and the partnership with the Runanga as well. But what engagement happened with iwi mana whenua?
Well, I think largely our engagement has been through Ra'awa Awa, but I think probably one of the things that we have done is talked with Kaumātua specifically. But I think one of the things that we potentially need to do is develop a greater relationship. And as Peggy says, this is an ongoing kind of living document, and I think there is a need to start to have some of those greater connections, because not every issue affecting older people or Kaumātua is actually about the Kaumātua themselves. It's about the wider kind of ecosystem around them. And so I think that's a very valid point, and I think we probably do need to create better relationships, because we haven't done a lot outside of speaking with Rangi Mahora and Ra'awa Awa around the work that they do. So I think that that's definitely an area that we can add as an ongoing action to make sure we do more of that.
Thank you. The other question was around, I didn't see anything or see on the partnerships that we had the DHB on there, who provide a large amount of services and hold funding as well. Is that because they?
Yes, that's true. As I said before, we just don't have the time or the pages really to document everything else that is occurring. So our categorization is to present new projects. Secondly, those that are already in existence, but we enhance them. We make them apply to older people. And thirdly, some continuing ones, which we think needs acknowledgement. And the huge development in Colombo Street with the Trust is an example. Okay. Just by the way, in case you're worried, Rangi Mahora, who is the head of Roawa, and I have frequent coffees. Okay. So we think we are together on a lot of things there. Great.
If I can just add a little bit more on the DHB, they are one of our partners, and there is an action. I'm sorry, I'm just looking for the page number here.
Yeah.
It is down, I think, on your agenda on page 51 that they are included in there. So they are one of our partners, so that they definitely are included. And I think one of the things that we're looking to do is to make sure that some of the advisory groups that they do have a greater understanding of issues facing older people more generally in Hamilton. I guess one of the issues we've got with the DHB is to make sure that they obviously have a regional perspective, we have a city perspective, and making sure that we can match those two up where we can.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Chair.
Great. Kia ora, thank you. Good questions. I'm going to be moving the staff recommendation if we have a seconder. Anyone would like to? Thanks, Tapora. Great. Councillor Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. One question, and maybe it will come under Access Hamilton, as Angela mentioned, but it was just the parking, mobility parking was mentioned in there, but they're not put in as an action. Is that something that we're reviewing anyway?
Well, can you give us where you're looking at?
Sure, I'll just have to. It's on the transport one with the and it says there was feedback and then there were actions, but
yes. Well, I mean, without the specifics, I think now there is realization that the transport plan probably needs, and other projects like it, probably needs to think about older people, disabled people, people with prams, etc. It is just so popular. And we need to just make access a little better.
If I can just add something into that too, if you like, Councillor Sarah, which is around, I think what we heard from older people is that maybe the disability parking associated with each individual business or wherever it might be may not always be adequate if you're thinking about the needs of both a disability and an older people's user group. There are some places in the city where there is dedicated older persons parking, which is in addition to mobility parking and Chartwell shopping centre is an example of that. So I think what they were asking is, can we start to work with maybe the business community to look at opportunities to add, doesn't necessarily have to be mobility parking, it could be older persons parking, in addition to what we already have. And so I think potentially maybe we need to just make it a little bit more clear in there that we need an action where our steering group is going to start working with the business community a little bit to see where opportunities might exist to add a few more in. I think that's what the action was really about, is making sure that that there is ample parking for older people alongside what we already have.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I just saw it as a comment, but then it didn't quite translate into an action there. So cool. Thank you. No.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. All right, now look, before we move into debate, Dame Peggy, and I'm not being cheeky here, but what is the term, the vernacular for older people at this point in time? Because I don't want to get this wrong.
Surprise, surprise, I've got an answer here for you, Mark.
Great.
And for the risk of the others, this had been whispered to me. The issue is, what do we call this group of people? Now, in the past, we called them the infirm.
Oh, good Lord.
Or those in the waiting room, and so on. Right now, we're all in the waiting room, I will tell you, from COVID. And the other comment before I get into the real stuff is that a name can become a fashion. And at different periods of time, we call people different things. And think about nicknames. All right. In brief, there is a very clear difference between elderly. And quite frankly, if somebody calls somebody elderly, from here on, you're in trouble. But the term elderly describes people only on the basis of their age. And that immediately separates them once and for all from everyone else. Because the question is, elderly what? So you go into a horse paddock and you point out a horse and just call it elderly. Well, actually, it's a horse first, which brings me to older people. So older people recognise that they are people first, and then they are older. And so they are part of people, the society. They're people first, there are younger people, middle-aged people, and then older people, etc. Okay, so when you see a group of people, you see people first, or horses if you must, and then you call them older people. Now, just as an aside, calling this age group, and there's another term, older people, means that we don't have to define always only those who are over 65. So if you look around the world, there are different ages. Also, some people can be older at about 50. Some people who are 95, you wouldn't class as an older person. So it's a bit flexible. So older people, they are people and they are older, secondly. Thank you, Mark.
Older people. Thank you, Peggy. That's very helpful indeed. So, all right. Well, look, I'll move it. We'll move into debate. There being no further questions. Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Peggy, for your work. It's always great to have you in here. You're a breath of fresh air every time we get to talk with you, and your work is very much well received and respected by this council. I'm always one for wanting this to be an aspirational plan more than just yes. And I think you hit it pretty well on the head when you said that people used to be called infirmed, and we certainly don't want to create that impression with any of our plans. So I'm all for, the thing that strikes me a lot every time I hear people go on about how we're the youngest city in the country, that's really great. Yeah. But you know what, that also says to me, we could be a city where people would actually set their hearts on retiring and spending that part of their lives and being around for that to raise their grandchildren, rather than heading over the hill to the retirement village we know as Tauranga. Oh. So I would love Hamilton to be one of those places, Kirikiri Hamilton to be one of those places where people see realistically as the greatest place in the land to spend that part of your life. So keep up the great work, really well behind it, and happy to move this report. Councillor Martin, I take it you're seconding this as well? Yep, great.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try and be brief because I'm not sure if you're on the control room of the TARDIS or you're in your downstairs disco in your house. But I'll try not to speak for the whole thing because I'm getting motion sickness just looking at you, and in fact I'll go on to multi-screen. Look, very quickly, it's a very effective timer, I have to tell you. Just quickly, thank you to Dame Peggy Koopman-Ward and her team. I think this is a really good example of a group that has considerable intellectual clout and capacity, is not, dare I say it, anemic yes person to the council of the day. It's showing clear independent thought, robust, but in a professional way. So this is the ideal, we're talking about advisory groups. This is the ideal advisory groups because there's intellectual grunt around the table, very much so, and really good partnership with our staff. And the only thing I'm looking for, Mr. Chair, is, the regular tick boxes of what progress we are obviously making. And then obviously the fast track alerting to council of issues that are starting to emerge that concern older Hamiltonians. But apart from that, well done, excellent report, and look forward to the ongoing implementation. And we're very lucky to have this particular group helping us. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I appreciate that. And I made an error there. Tapura's already seconded this, but no dramas whatsoever. Well done and well in time. Right, no further speakers I see here. So, no. All right, we will now move this report. And along with the staff recommendation that we endorse the Hamilton Age Friendly Plan for the next 3 years, and note that the next report will be to the Community Committee annually beginning in August 22. All those in favour, raise your hand, please. Any against?
Carried unanimously.
Kia ora, thank you, team. Okay, hey, look, we're going well. We will aim to get this next item done, item 8, the access to sports facilities, etc. Maxine, I see your. Oh, that's a clap. I see a big bun. Yeah, we'll get this done before we have a cup of tea. So, moving on. Right. Okay. Here we go. So this is on page 57, and now, Martin, while I've got your attention, I'd be happy if you move this, because this has really been initiated by your drive to get the.
That would. Oh, thank you. That would be a pleasure to be able to move it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, cool. So
to second that on Martin's, along with Martin.
That's fine, Maxine. Great, done. So the recommendation is that we receive this report, and we note that future updates regarding the community access to sports fields and facilities will now come through the GM's report. And this has been a relatively new body of work, initiated largely by Councillor Martin, and the guts of it is that we wanted a better relationship with schools, because with limited green space and fences around schools, it seemed like a bit of an anomaly that a lot of the space wasn't being used. But of course, that comes with various limitations. The team had, if you remember, been to the ministry, and the ministry said this is really a board of trustees issue, and so the team have done a really great job in striking up dialogues with all these different schools, and they're getting some pretty darn good response. So with that introduction, I'll hand it over to staff to carry on.
Sorry, just unmute myself. Sorry. Good morning again. This report, as the chair said, is a follow-up to the report presented in June around access to school sports fields and facilities. Since that time, Dr. Damien Puddle, who's in the meeting now as well, and Sport Waikato have surveyed schools to build a better picture of schools across the city, have a more comprehensive list of schools that have an interest in increasing community access to their sports fields and facilities. We've updated our map to represent this, and can now move forward to having conversations with schools around potential trials to see what works and what doesn't. I'll hand over to Damien if he has any other comments before we take any questions from you.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you, Chair and councillors. Probably just a couple of things. The map ultimately is meant to be an A0 printout for you to sort of pore over. So it is a little bit difficult to review in its current format. But yeah, there was a playgrounds layer added to it, as well as identifying those fringe schools, bordering schools that councillors had asked for detail for. Secondary schools, which we didn't previously have information for, and there are still a couple that are outstanding in terms of any data for, but council staff have been supporting with their networks to get that data submitted for the form. And yeah, now we're in a position to better understand where we can move in terms of case studies, what some of the schools are interested in doing, and exploring what council support could look like.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Damien. Is that it for you?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. I'm just trying to get our screen back. There we go. All right. We'll open up for questions. In this order so far, I've got Ollie, Maxine, Sarah, and Martin at this point. So, Mangai, Ollie, kia ora.
Kia ora, Chair Mark. Thanks for that. Hey, just, Nick, question. Where was the attachment?
I think that was there an attachment to the report? I think it's just the map, isn't it? I think is the only. I
just couldn't. I couldn't find that in the agenda. Maybe I just went straight past it. But
it's not in there.
It's not in there, is there? Can I just ask that the next report that comes up, if we can just have that map attached, because it's a lot easier for me to process it that way. Thank you.
Yeah, no problems. Apologies that that's coming late.
Not a problem. If need be, maybe you could email it to members after the meeting, if that's all right. Appreciate that, guys. Thanks, Ollie. Councillor Maxine.
Kia ora, thank you. I think the map was in the last report, Ollie, but it may have been updated with the further layer, as Dr. Puddle mentioned, and it would be good to be able to see that. Also, I would welcome that. And thanks for the work that has happened since their last meeting to approach schools to find out what their level of comfort is. I acknowledge that there are some real concerns for them around safety, etc. And you've mentioned some of those things. What kind of strategies are we using, though, to give some of the schools who have said that they're not ready for that, some comfort that that they'll get some support and community engagement through this process?
Well, I think the first thing we can do is actually work with the schools that have already shown interest and actually show that that's potentially some of those fears are maybe unfounded or not as serious as maybe some of the more reluctant schools think they are. So I think the best thing we can do is actually start some trials and see what works and start to build up a bit of a case of what does work, which will hopefully give those other schools a bit more comfort that there aren't as many fears for them, that they can move ahead and there won't be too many problems. Damien, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, the schools that already keep their grounds open identify the fact that they are used by the community as the certainty that they have to ensure against vandalism. So there are different schools of thought, but one of the other pieces of work that I've been supporting with is developing case studies within New Zealand and internationally that have explored what this looks like when they go through this process. And so there's a range of material and resources that we can provide schools with so that they can see what different alternatives might look like.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And then following up from that, how do we let the public know that these spaces are available to them? The ones that are currently open and the newer ones that want to work with council. How are we informing not just the school parent population, but the wider community in order that they, got knowledge of that access?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and it is something that we've talked about recently, is that we probably need to have a conversation with our communications team about what tools we can potentially use to inform the public that these spaces are available to the rest of the community at certain times. So I think that as part of these trials that we're going to start developing with schools that are willing to be involved early on, I think we need to look at what that communication looks like. So I think it needs to be a really important part of the trials, is how we're going to communicate to the public, because if we're going to trial these things, we need to make sure they are well used.
Yeah, that's an excellent answer. Thank you for that. And then if they've got buildings and halls, etc., that are available to the public, how are those booking processes managed, and is there a way to be able to do that in a really effective and efficient way rather than giving another job to the secretary at the school?
Yeah, that's a good question that I don't have an answer to. I'll probably need to come back to you about how we might be able to support that, because I do think that's a good point. So if that's okay, I'll get some information and come back to you on that particular question.
Okay, thanks, Nick. And then finally, later in today's meeting, there's a report about the council being approached by other community groups for spaces and grounds, etc. How could this new collaboration alleviate that pressure and assist those groups to be able to meet that wider community need?
Yeah, I think there's a really good opportunity there, and it will be the same group of staff in terms of our Parks and Open Spaces staff who will be involved in both projects. So I think there is some opportunity to, where there is an opportunity there, we should be able to highlight it, because it will be the same people that have been involved in this discussion. So yeah, I think actually our team will be talking quite closely with the team that's involved in that work as well, to make sure that where opportunities come up, we can take advantage of them.
Okay, and look, I wonder, Chair, if there's the opportunity to sort of match that up and report back in some way to your committee around, how council can, broker those kinds of relationships.
Yeah, I certainly don't think it's worth putting into a resolution or anything to that effect. But
No,
the point's been well noted, and we'll carry on with that body of work with both of those items. Is that right, Lance?
Yes. Could I just make a comment going on from Maxine's really good question? Sport New Zealand have just brought out a online guide as well around hubbing, and you're talking about the multi-use of whether it's fields or facilities and things like that, and they'll be developing and building the maturity of that as information and case studies sort of grow across New Zealand. And there's quite a few there already. So there's quite a bit of work being done on this, and our team and Sport Waikato are working closely with a guy called Glenn McGovern from Sport NZ around those sorts of things. So there's quite a bit of effort there, and there's some good case studies right throughout New Zealand. Look, there's no one model fits all. I think, Maxine, you've identified that, the relationships and the intel and of the local scene is really important. So I think that's where we can look at how do we play a role in that, whether it's through Maria's team, the community advisors, or all of the above, and how we do that about really matching up groups that might be like-minded and have the goodwill to work together, save everyone money and utilise, taxpayer and ratepayer money wisely.
Cool. Thank you, Lance. Cool. You all right with that, Maxine?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Good. Thank you for those questions. Councillor Sarah.
Thanks, Chair. Just following on from Maxine's question around, I guess, any issues arising in the trial where potentially there's damage to the school facilities during the kind of community use period. What are we looking to do to kind of mitigate that risk, or what's the plan if there is damage done during that open time?
Yeah, Damien might want to add to this, but I think that's largely something that we would work through in terms of the agreements we're making when we set up a trial. So we would have discussions with the individual school about what the trial looks like and where responsibilities lie. So I think it's largely going to be in how we have that conversation with each individual school. Damien's nodding, so I think I've got that right.
Okay.
Okay, Sarah.
So I guess you'll get to a point where both parties feel comfortable with
correct
any risks. Okay.
Yeah.
Schools also already receive a vandalism budget from the Ministry of Education. So there would be discussion around what that looks like if council is also partnering on the opening of those spaces.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good stuff. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent report, which we'll mention in the debate. Just obviously, I'm going to be intrigued in the one school has not completed the survey but indicated no community access interest in partnership. I'll be privately intrigued as to which school that is. I don't want to do an OIA on that one. But just the question is, in terms of the ongoing reporting, we've got the 15 schools. Are you able to, as we proceed, obviously, it would be interesting to do, the school by school breakdown of what the issues, what the positives are, because obviously every school has a different mix in terms of the campus structure and all of those kind of things. So I'm sort of looking for, if you don't mind, because these are the pilot schools, into reasonably micro approach, because what I want is, I guess, our agreement, I take it, will be very much nuanced to each individual school. It won't be a one size fit all, obviously.
Yes, that's correct. And so I think once we've got some results from those trials to share with you as elected members, we can definitely bring that information back and then decide where we go next with it. So yes, I would imagine at the time that we have some results, we would come back with a fuller report to council.
The other thing too, which, not wanting to give you extra work, but I'm thinking very much of the hero schools like Hamilton Boys High School, Waikato University campus, albeit that's outside this study way, but in terms of which do have always had that open space. And I'll be interested in the schools that have decided not to fence, and just keeping abreast of their ongoing issues as well, because obviously we want to encourage them to stay open.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of dovetails into one of Councillor Maxine's questions, which was around how we actually publicise what's working well and making sure that our community understands where there already are spaces where the community can use these school grounds. So I think there's a bit of work to be done in terms of promoting what's already working well. So I think that's part of that is captured in what you're suggesting.
And can you also inform us, because obviously the schools themselves in some cases will have aspirations, like for example, swimming pool, partner pools concept. They themselves will have ideas of how they, want to engage more with the city and have partnership. Now that in terms of LTP issues obviously involves us considering budget bids, but presumably you'll give us a clear idea as to what they would like to achieve with council.
Yeah, absolutely, and I guess that's a really important point to raise as well, is that this isn't a one-way conversation in terms of council wants something from schools. Is that there will certainly be schools who absolutely want to work more closely with council on partnership projects. So I think that's really good to acknowledge that it is absolutely a two-way conversation.
Thank you. And the final question, just if I can follow up from I think Ollie's point, if you can circulate the map. As you know, we have the ideal, we have is it 25%? We have a certain percentage of residences that are more than 500 metres from a I assume a public green space. Have we done an analysis as to those areas and which particular schools would assist in that access to schools, which might become the substitute park?
Yeah. I might just pass it over to Damien to answer that one if you're okay with that, Damien.
Sure. Yeah. So the mapping layer that refers to the 500-metre walking access is only to the council parks and reserves, but with the data from the schools, that could be modified to reflect what's accessible for those schools. At present, the areas that are most of need of accessibility and not including the data that has been reflected from the schools is around Melville, Fairfield, Enderley, and Dinsdale areas, and also some Hamilton East spaces. So with that data modifying that 500-metre walking access, that will actually increase that accessibility. But that's the intent of that data, is to help inform where council could actually approach specific schools for those partnership opportunities to increase that access.
Sure. That particular question very much also relates to the work that Councillor Hamilton's committee is doing in terms of the review of our district plan and high density. I'd also be very interested in, if you like, a bit of a micro discussion when you bring that material back next time. I mean, I would like genuinely a micro discussion on those areas, such as the parts of Melville, Dinsdale, Hamilton East, Enderley, etc. I think that would be really useful, but also overlaying their access to their nearest school as well.
Right. Thank you, Martin. Thank you. Appreciate that. Mayor Paula.
Whoops, long way. Thank you. Thank you. Really good discussion. Really pleased to see this piece of work underway, and credit to you, Martin, for consistently raising this as an opportunity. I think there are some hooks in it, though, I just want to ask about. And I think my questions go along the lines that Maxine was talking about. The coordination, will it be the coordination, facilitation, booking, caretaking? Those are the couple of things I wanted to ask about. So do you think a model such as having a centralised coordination booking centre and reporting centre where people can report in any vandalism, broken glass, whatever else happens, that's all in one spot, might be one of the solutions? I'm thinking that the Peak does a great job of using that co-space and looking after it, and we were extending the Peak to do some of our other facilities management, I believe, Lance, right? So I'm just wondering if that's the model where somehow, because Maxine makes a good point about the office administrator having another extra job. So I'm wondering if that And I'm including 4 things: coordination, facilitation, booking, and caretaking. Comment on that, and then I have one more question, please.
I think largely these are the kind of things that we definitely need to iron out when we start to have individual conversations with schools. And as we have more trials come on board, we will probably need to look at making sure we're not requiring people to double handle in terms of who they talk to. Yes, I do think that is something we're absolutely going to have to be aware of as we move forward. I guess in this initial phase where we're just starting those conversations with schools at the moment. So I think that's absolutely something we need to capture when we have the individual conversations with each school. I think that's probably all I can add to that. I don't know if Lance wants to add anything further, but yeah.
I'll just keep that in my lens so that we can talk about it at the right time, because I'm wondering also about the financial resources required on our part, on the Ministry of Education's part and the local schools part, because there's wellbeing for each community. So what would for an annual plan conversation, it might be really useful to understand what costs might come with the work to buy those benefits for our community.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those. Oh, sorry.
No, go. Sorry.
Oh, I think I was just going to say, I think it's just really important that when we're having these discussions with school, we're very clear on whose role is what, in terms of who's responsible for what, so that if people do have an issue, they are actually reporting to the right place, so we don't kind of have that kind of confusion.
Okay, that's cool. Final comment, and I hate to throw another sort of question or spanner into the works or thing to think about, but could we also think about, because it was raised with me yesterday by our credit rating agency, Standard & Poor's, who were doing their annual audit and survey. They're from Melbourne, so they've got big COVID problems. But one of the things that they did raise was how we are setting up for a future in which COVID potentially always plays a part. You know, we know we might need booster shots. There might be some version of COVID always lingering, or, you know, half a second away kind of thing. And they were talking about recreational and green spaces and sports spaces, and thinking about that in new ways, so that going forward with constraints of virus and so on, we can still use and exercise and use space. And I just wondered, it seems like I have never thought about it, to be honest, like that. But I'm wondering if we're going to do some thinking in that whole recreation parks space, school space, as to how things, when we're locked down or in limited lockdown, they're not closed, but they're managed for the well-being of people. Because at the moment, there's a lot of places you just can't go, right?
Yeah, and I do think like having more of these spaces available to the community more freely is obviously going to increase the amount of places that people can go. It means they don't have to travel as far for, you know, access to green space in a situation where we are locked down, and people shouldn't be traveling far from home, that they should be walking. So I think you know, those kind of ongoing conversations with schools to make them more comfortable to have these spaces open at times like a lockdown would be very, very useful to the community. Most of us can probably think of a school that's close to us and where we're living right now, that if it was open for access for people to use the sports field, at least that would help. So I think there's absolutely an opportunity to weave that into some of the conversations that we start to have with the schools.
All right, thank you, Paula. Your question out there. Good stuff. Just no more questions. Just one quick question from me. So the ministry made it pretty clear when we first approached them that, look, it's an individual board decision, etc. As this gathers momentum, I take it the ministry is still watching closely.
Yeah, well, I mean, council staff have regular meetings with ministry staff, so it is something that's on our agendas when we meet, to make sure that we're keeping each other informed about issues.
Yeah, great. Okay, because I can see that's, you know, as this goes ahead, you know, someone there will find a reason to make it harder or necessarily easier as well. So just want to make sure they're abreast of it all. So that's really good. Great. Okay, look, it's been moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Maxine. Martin, if you'd like to debate, if you choose, you're welcome to open it up.
Just a very brief contribution. I'll try to not look at that screen. with you on the TARDIS. But anyway, look, just as a minor point, I think also in addition to the Minister of Education, also keep all of our local MPs informed, because the messaging they must give back to the ministry and the minister is that, of what we're doing. This is a good example. And I understand that the current government, with the way it's restructuring education and would be incredibly supportive, I would hope. Look, I just want to do a big shout out to Sport Waikato and our staff team, because obviously you're building on willing partners to maximise the opportunity, an excellent list of schools, and work with those and deepen that partnership. And then hopefully that can be the shining example to other schools who, genuinely may have genuine reservations, but hopefully can be brought on board. The only other thing I'd make the point is that with our city becoming more high density, and that's going to be the case in the future, this project becomes even more important in terms of maximising our ability for young people and young and old to access our green and active play spaces. But a big shout out for the work that's been done. Music to one's ears. Thank you.
Great stuff, Martin. That's excellent. I've got Maxine and then Dave. So Councillor Maxine.
Thank you, and thanks very much, Nick, to you and your team, and especially to Dr. Puddle and Sport Waikato for taking this further and really have a deep look into what might be possible. I think this is a real and positive progress that's been made, and signals that the development of relationships that can only grow with our schools, our school management, council, and our community. There's nothing more important in the COVID lockdown 4 world than being able to get outside, have a bit of a walk and blow off a bit of steam. We all know that we're not to be playing on the playground, so a caveat there that won't be happening. But certainly having access to our local schools and public property is really critical and important to me. Look, I acknowledge the risks, though, that schools believe that they have, but those are far outweighed by the benefits to community wellbeing and the development of those relationships. However, there is some further planning and thinking that needs to be going on, and that will ensure that the public know exactly what's available to them and have a system that's really easy to use without putting additional burden on the poor old school secretary who is probably paid a little over the living wage and already has a list as long as your arm to have to complete on a daily basis. And that's not even taking into account what other duties might be needed in the renting out of a space at school. So if we can solve those kinds of problems, then it's just going to go from strength to strength, and that will be what brings other schools into providing these kinds of opportunities for the public to be able to use. And I'm really encouraged that we'll be able to see many more schools entering into these relationships, and that they'll be able to then optimise the real benefit of building those strong relationships with their community. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Maxine. Very good. All right, Dave, we've got a screensaver for you there. Okay, you're next. So Paula, you'll be after Dave. So, Councillor Dave.
Thanks, Chair. Look, echo the thanks to staff and Damien and Sport Waikato, but particular shout out to my colleague, Councillor Martin, who's been banging on about this issue since Adam was halfback for the Israelites. And I'm glad we're getting some traction now, Martin. You've been right all along, and I think we're showing some fruits of your squeaky wheelness about this. Look, I was interested also to see that we've expanded the city a little bit in a direction that's probably going to happen in future, but it's happening a bit quicker. Puketaha School is in there, and I think maybe, Ryan, you might have something to do with that, but we're good to see that we've now taken that area into the city. Look, more seriously, schools are part of the community and they need to start acting like it, and we need to start treating them like they're part of the community and not a separate area. Unfortunately, they're not rated at the moment, so we don't get the full share of from the government that we should in terms of the financial input. And I was interested to see that in that list of schools that are keen to participate that Sport Waikato's given us, there are some integrated schools who will have to pay us DCs for any buildings they put on that the community might use, whereas there are also public schools who wouldn't have to pay us DCs when they put up buildings. So but we've got that issue coming up again in the next couple of months through my committee to have a look at, and I suggest before we go too far down this track, today's track, we sort out so there's a level playing field for integrated schools and even private schools that are, intend to open their facilities to the community a bit more. I'm particularly noticed a school that's quite close to where I live, Te Ao Marama, the new primary school on Borman Road there. They have quite a small footprint, but they've already approached us about using some of the future sports park next to them for school sporting occasions, but they also are right next to one of our destination playgrounds, and their kids clearly use that heavily, and that's a great community area. They've got a gym which they also lease out to the community. So in terms of a community precinct, I don't actually see that so much a school as just a focal point in the community, and that's the way it should be in future. So the more we can move down that way, the better. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Dave. Ding, 5 seconds. Well done. All right. I think I have Mayor Paula. I see you with your hand up. Let me just reset, and you're away.
Oh, I thought I was on a plane there for a minute, jetting off to somewhere nice, but
It was for you in that one.
that was just a dream. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for the good work on this. It's an important piece of work. They are excellent facilities, and I do think the schools, well supported, can be stronger hubs of the community, just as Dave has said. My concern is about getting it right so that we all play a proper partnership, that we keep those places safe. I used to be on 2 boards of trustees for many, many years, and I have to say that children's playgrounds and playing fields take a hammering sometimes with things like broken glass and obscene objects left lying around, and the caretaker deals with all of that. So this has to be a genuine partnership. As I said, I'm really keen to find out how we work in partnership, coordination, that we're a facilitator in this space, that somehow we take some control over some of the admin, the booking, the caretaking is part of our responsibility as well. We can't have usage with no responsibility. We've got to take our share of looking after those facilities, just as we do with our own. So, but I think it's an exciting future. And honestly, as I said before, with COVID, it's going to linger for a very long time in some form or another. We do need to look at how we enable communities to use whatever green space we do have to keep fit, to keep well, to connect in whatever limited fashion that COVID makes them do that at whatever time. So, yeah, no, it's an exciting piece of work. Thanks to the team for doing it. And yeah.
Thank you, Paula. Appreciate that. No more speeches. I'll just say a last few words before Martin relinquishes his right of reply. Let me see. Look, some great points made today. Yeah, echo. Thank you, Martin, for banging on about this, and thank you, staff, for being the second dancer and picking this up and running with it. It's nice to see. Every school is different, and I like that approach. I'm glad we're not trying to come up with some sort of larger-than-life policy with the entire ministry, because it would just be hard. So going in through the trustees' door is really good. But Dave made a really good point, I believe, and that is schools are our community. All right, they're not a separate part of the community. It's not the school and the community. In fact, they are our largest community groups. So each of them needs to be treated with the same respect and difference that we treat all the groups. I'm not enormously in favour at this point of rushing out to comms and saying, guess what, Aberdeen School is now open on the weekends, because it'll be bigger than Texas. I think we just do this gently, case by case, get it right. I shuddered when I heard someone suggest that we even take over the caretaking duties for them and stuff. We've got to be really careful with this stuff. It's got to be it is a partnership, but it's gently. And Maxine's right. We don't want to create a whole lot of work for the presumably underpaid receptionist at the schools, but we also don't want to assume responsibility for booking every school hall as well. So I think gently, softly, it's very positive at the moment. Thanks, staff. I think you're doing a great job, and we'll look forward to this coming back to the general manager's report in next time it's reported back. So thank you. Martin, would you like to write a reply?
No, you've just delivered it. Excellent debate. Thank you.
Great stuff. Well done, guys. Okay, well, it's been moved by Councillor Martin and seconded by Councillor Maxine. The motion is that where are we? Yeah. Oh, look, you've seen the motion. It's going to come back to the General Manager's report next time, and we'll receive the report. Can we have all those in favour, please? Show of hands. And Mangai Tapora, can't see you there. All right, anyone against?
Carried unanimously.
Kia ora, thanks, guys. Hey, look, it's 5 to 11. We've been here since 9, so if you're happy to come back at, shall we say, 11:15, start then, and we'll see if we can't march on through the rest of the agenda. Everybody happy with that? Yep, great. So 11:15, we will start promptly, though. Okay, thanks, guys. G'day. Yeah, just bloody all of a sudden the peak is now running every school in town, and we might Hey, Angela. Can't hear you there, mate.
I know. Actually, just even though I was on mute, I just mouthed.
Oh, that messes people up, eh? G'day, Maxine.
Hey, Mark.
Coffee break.
Yep.
Mark.
G'day, Martin.
Yes, I'm getting motion sickness looking at you.
Sorry about that, mate.
No, actually, I'm putting you on a small screen. You know, you have the combination.
Oh,
you know, where you've got all that sort of your disco. Do you have a downstairs disco in your house, or what is it?
But I've got to say, thank you for being the first one to mention the word disco in a meeting in the last 20 years. That's awesome.
Oh, well, I mean, even the TARDIS, but it is, yes, I realise Yes, I will. I'll now express my hurt to Dame Peggy on that remark. Thank you very much.
Would you? Yeah.
No,
She's
no,
great,
no,
isn't she?
but that was an excellent report from Dame's group, Dame Peggy's group. Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm excited about it being a bit more aspirational. And then, the accessibility plan is going to save them
Absolutely.
a lot of saying the same stuff as well. Amen.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Very high quality work. Very impressive.
Yes. Yep. All right. So how's our quorum looking? 1, 2. Dave, are you there, mate? You can see your background. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. G'day, Paula. See you there. Ewan's there. All right, Ewan, in honor of you, I'll go with where is it?
We've got quorum
This
now.
one.
Councillor Bunting.
Great, thanks. Okay, look, let's resume the meeting.
Yay. Great background.
Yeah, I thought they would. I'm trying to do one for everybody to keep you engaged.
Airbus Neo A321.
Is it?
Yeah.
Ah, I see they got rid of the 777s. Did you see that? They've
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't decided to convert a couple of them into freighters, but
yeah. Have you ever been to one of those boneyards?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, that'd be heartbreaking places to hang out, wouldn't they?
I brought nearly a whole 737 back from the boneyard. It's by Auckland Airport for travel careers and training for their flight attendant training.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they just sit there for hours or for years and years and years and years.
Yeah, until they turned into Coke cans.
Wow.
And beer cans.
Right. Okay, team. Well, let's crack on with the meeting. We're reopened. We are moving now. Remember, item 9 is coming up at the end of the meeting, so we go into item 10, which is the Civil Defence Emergency Management Quarterly Update. And I don't know how much power you have there, Calvin, but you seem to be sort of influencing a lockdown every time you speak. So, yeah, be careful with what you say. But if you'd like to lead off, mate, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair. Morning, councillors. Mangai Oli, Mangai Te Pora, na tēnā kōrua. This is bringing the quarterly civil defence report back before the committee. The report can largely be taken as read. There are a couple of points. First, that there's references to the outcome of the positional review that was undertaken at the regional or the group civil defence, and that Mark Bang had been appointed as the partnerships team leader who would be responsible for the day-to-day supervision of our local emergency management staff. Mark was to be joining us, and he was trying a little while ago when I was last talking to him to get on. I'm not sure whether he's got there or not. It was a chance to introduce him to the committee. The second thing was that we took the opportunity when offered by the DHB to have a number of our staff put forward as essential workers to get priority vaccinations for COVID. And we put 77 names of staff forward for that. They were for people who would be engaged in face-to-face engagement with the community in a civil defence emergency. So they were really, and I see that I'm just getting a note now telling me that Mark has now joined the meeting. So virtually I've introduced Mark Bang as the team leader, and he's available to answer any questions on a regional or wider basis if the committee wishes. Obviously, since the report was prepared, there have been two major events that occurred. The first was the flooding in Westport, and for which Hamilton has had sent 7 staff down to work down there at various stages during the response. And there are some feedback on that if the council was interested. It would more likely come back up in the next committee meeting. But it was just about what their observations were, how they found it, and the value add of being down there. And then obviously we've moved into the new COVID Delta. And so that's probably overtaken the report, but that's by way of introduction, a discussion, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, are there any questions? We have Mangai Te Pora. Kia ora.
Thank you, Chair. Tēnā koroa, Calvin. Ko Mark. Lovely to see you, Mark. Look, I've got 3 questions. One is about the boundaries. And so we move into alert level 3, the wee hours this coming morning. What's the potential or perceived impact to Kirikiriroa based on these boundaries, if any? I'll ask that question first and then come to the other 2.
Okay, well, I'm happy to answer. In terms of Kirikiriroa impact, nil that I can see. Whilst I still haven't seen the last version of the health order, it hadn't been announced as at 7 o'clock this morning when I had my last briefing. There were certainly indications that it was going to be based on the same positions as it was during the February-March outbreak that they had in Auckland when they went to level 3. On that basis, we don't believe there is any impact.
Are we able to get that boundary map circulated?
As soon as we get it, we'll be able to make that available. We didn't have it as we did. So the 8:30 briefing I had this morning, it hadn't been released through the health order.
Okay. The other one was point 28. It talks about development of the Pauarahi role, whether that's a regional or more local to Hamilton. What does it actually mean?
I think what we did was during the last COVID, we started a concept which became the Pauarahi, and I'll hand that over to Mark because that has been picked up now at the regional level too, and they have a Pauarahi presence in the GEC. Mark, do you want to talk to that anymore?
Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you. Yeah, and nice to see you too, Te Pura. Just confirming, I've been the acting group controller for the last 4 days, so I can confirm Kelvin's advice to the committee that the boundaries alert level 3 and 4 will have no material impact on Kirikiriroa, and the boundaries are available on the Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group website. There's a public viewer there. For your information. They are proposed, so not enforced yet, of course, as Kelvin's alluding to. The Pauarahi role, yes, so the Māori iwi framework that Te Pora you developed through COVID Mark 1, the KEG asked for that to be deployed around local authorities. And I can speak on behalf of the GEC. We do have a Pauarahi team active in the Group Emergency Coordination Centre now, and they are collaborating and working with iwi liaison as well as their own iwi contacts in the community at the grassroots level to make sure that needs are being met to unblock any issues and to ensure that communication is flowing through to the communities. Over.
And just the last question was around, there's also a note on emphasis being placed on working with tangata whenua around enhancing the understanding and application of emergency management, preparation and response. What does that mean? It doesn't describe what that means. It just says that something's happening.
I'm happy to have a go at that too, Kelvin, if you wish.
Okay.
Good. So the what we're as part of that is the deployment of the Māori iwi framework, so that we have a standard model for any emergency operations centre should it be stood up around the Waikato region, and also as part of that, the coordination executive group have approved a contract to develop how tangata whenua can be involved in the CDM group at all levels, through from from sitting at having a presence at the joint committee table, albeit that's constrained by legislation at the moment in terms of voting, and at the KEG level. So that contract's underway to investigate how that could take place in the Waikato.
And just to note that there's no mention of the Matariki Award that the Civil Defence received through the DHB and the iwi leadership. Just to note that was given.
Yeah, and look, that's a pure oversight on my part. It was the topic of 2 different write-ups within council, within our day-to-day stuff, celebrating that. And yes, it was an oversight on my part.
Too modest, mate. You're too modest. Thanks, Tapora. You done? Great, thank you. And welcome along, Mark. It was nice to have you here. If we haven't got enough marks already, it's brilliant. I love the wee over you dropped at the end of one of your pieces as well. I thought you were the right man for this job.
It's been in the habit in the last few days.
Yeah, over. All right. So Councillor Ryan would like to move this. I'm happy to second it. It's just that we received the report. Is there any comment, Councillor Ryan?
Look, I'll just say quickly, obviously this was pre the latest outbreak and stuff, but it's just always good, Calvin, you and your team bring real confidence, certainly to me as an elected member, that we're in good hands when these situations arise, and just acknowledge the work you do and the confidence you bring to the role, and also just to see a bit of succession coming in with your alternate manager you've got there as well. So it's good to see that we're continuing to widen and build that capacity. So just acknowledge it and well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, and look, I absolutely agree. And it's worthy of note too that we're not actually in a civil defence technically at the moment, which is different to last one. But having seen you guys in action, I'm in total awe of what you do. I love how seriously you take it, and I feel very, very safe with you guys there. So happy to second. Any other speakers? Right, reply, Ryan? No, beauty. All right, so Ryan has moved that we receive the report. Those in favour, show of hands, please. Anyone against?
Carried unanimously.
Thank you. Thanks, Calvin.
Thank you.
We'll see you back with Andrea a bit later on. Great. Right, we're now moving on to item number 11, which is the Community Facilities on Parks update. Now, this is a result of a meeting a few months ago, where some concerns were raised that there didn't seem to be any sort of really visibility over who wanted what and what exactly we had. So staff went away and came back with this report, which I will, and this worthy of note too, is if you're like me and you think, well, it's a bit light on detail, go to the very end of the agendas. You'll see right at the bottom there's supplementary information, which has all the details on the state of pretty much all our facilities work. So I understand from Lance this is an ongoing body of work, but I'll let staff speak to it and go questions wise, and happy to move if no one else is burning to move it. So right, over to you, team. Is it Andy, Lance, Maria?
I'll second it, Chair.
Oh, I just did.
Great, thanks, Ewan.
Oh, sorry.
That's
Sorry.
all right, Ewan. It's no biggie. Let's go.
Good morning, Chair Mark, Mayor Paula and elected members and Mangai. Thank you for the lovely introduction there, Mark. Just a couple of points that I want to cover off. As you said, this is an ongoing piece of work and the work has been undertaken in 3 parts. So we have carried out a survey of existing organisations to understand better what the use and capacity of our existing facilities are. Andy is on the call and is able to answer any questions in that space. Again, as you said, there has been some supplementary info uploaded to Diligent overnight, which relates to the analysis of parks, which determines which could have community facilities placed on them. And then at the back of the agenda item, there's a draft process that Karen is on the call and she's able to answer any questions relating to.
Okay, do we have any questions, or Karen, would you like to carry on? Oh, okay. Any questions on that, team?
I think I do. I think I do. Thank you.
All right. You just put Maxine. So Maxine, you're next. Depora, your hand's still up. I'm not sure if you've got a question. No. Okay, great. So
Okay,
Paula.
thank you. Thank you. I think this is really good work and something we've been talking about for a little while. I wonder, looking at the diagram's hard when you're not able to see it on a big screen and everything like that, but in terms of how this moves us towards my aspiration, Maria, that I had when I was in Mark's role, which is to get the best use of each facility. So everybody's in a facility that's fit for purpose and we understand where our gaps are. Because some people are in buildings that, don't necessarily deliver the best for them. So how we match the facility with the user group. Can you talk me through how this process will achieve that in the long run, please?
So the survey has helped us connect in with those existing user groups and gather a little bit more information about where we are at. At the time of the LTP, we had identified that there were areas of great need, and the first 3 years of the LTP funding have been prioritised for renewal of Fairfield Enderley and some work at Te Rapa Sports Drome. So we know that those areas are likely to get a significant remodel rather than a standard like for like. That work will continue through the 10-year plan period, and what we're saying is that prior to the next review of the 10-year plan, Council will have some decisions in terms of some of the funding that's allocated and some of the ageing facilities we have, and perhaps we need to think about whether we demolish some of the existing facilities and purpose build, and that's certainly a decision that will be for the next 10-year plan.
Yeah, okay, cool. Just another question, if I might. I'm aware, and I know you are because I send them on to you every time. There are a number of users, excuse me, in facilities that are on a very short lease, 3 months and 3 months and 3 months, which means that they, like, for example, the Cadet Hall near Day Street, which means that they're perpetually kind of wondering whether they should bother to fundraise and do up the hall and, how that will go. How close are we around solving some of those issues with this process? Because I'd like to encourage groups. If you look at the difference between the Community Brass Band building, that is amazing, and the Cadets one, chalk and cheese, right? But I think the Cadets are really willing to use that because they like the parade ground, they like the hall, but it's so old and cold, honestly. What do we do with that in that space?
Yes, Councillor Paula. So in the very short term, Karen has a meeting arranged and I will be attending later on this week to discuss some specifics with the cadets and some options for them to extend that month-by-month period. There is no getting around in the longer term. Some decisions will have to be made about the building, and we're having some work done to have a look at structurally, is it worth doing up? What is the benefit to the community in doing that building up? Is there other opportunities to cohabitate or hub with other partners? What I would also say is that Lance and I recently attended in Wellington to have a look at the work that they have been doing, and it is very hard work. One of the things that resonated for me in that session is that if you look after what you've got, it'll serve the people that are using it currently very well, but it won't necessarily serve the wider community. So we will be asking Council to be reasonably bold at the next LTP, and we will have a lot more information to help you inform those decisions.
Sorry, for the last question, Mark, sorry, LTP, or will some of this be able to progress through annual plan? Because I think some of these groups are really on the cusp of moving somewhere else. I think for the cadets, they might even leave Hamilton, and we've got Army, Navy and Air Force cadets there.
Yes, so in the report, Mayor Paula, I've paragraph 31, I've highlighted an opportunity. Yendal Park has got some renewals funding tagged to it in this 3-year term, and we'll be bringing back some options to the annual plan for consideration, which may include using that funding at another facility.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Paula. Thanks, Maria. Appreciate that. Appreciate the magnitude of what's going on in your head at the moment too. So it's really impressive. I've got Maxine, then you, and then Martin. So Councillor Maxine.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Maria. Earlier in the meeting, I asked about the availability of school property and fields, etc. And I would be really interested in your response to that question and how it might be able to alleviate some of the pressure that we're seeing, but that also how might we also be able to coordinate or to participate in exploring how to coordinate bookings and etc. of those kinds of facility.
So absolutely, Councillor Maxine, that is a reasonably sized opportunity. Andy may be able to add some comment. We've already made a start with the provision of a citywide map which identifies all the community facilities that are available for booking, not just the ones that council owns. So Andy, is there anything more to add?
Just kia ora, councillors, manga Māori. Just really that it's a large complex piece of work, and so there's lots of those individual conversations. We as council facilitate on our website of that visibility for a user who might go, I need to make a booking, or I'd like to use a particular space, what's available in the city for me, and that kind of can connect them through, but it's very much a one-by-one onto the platform rather than we've got the answer for everybody at the moment.
Yeah, I had a look at that, the map. There was a link to it through the report, and thank you for that. It just didn't seem to be easy to use to say, I'm in this area, I'm doing this function, I need these kinds of rooms, so that you could filter out the opportunities to be able to really look at it. And it didn't bring into, in my knowledge, any of the school property that might be available. So just
from a website perspective, our comms team are doing a piece of work at the moment to refresh our entire web presence, and this particular map has been identified as something that will look different, but hopefully the usability will be better in terms of that. And then we've got some of our team who are really progressing that individual contact with schools. Would you like to have your facilities on the website? So it's a sort of a slowly extending the reach, as we're totally appreciating that the website's going to look slightly different hopefully by the end of the year. So there's definitely a work in progress.
The other comment I'd make, Councillor Maxine, is that as this piece of work and the schools work progress, council may decide that there is a role for us in coordinating these and may need to resource that.
And that those decisions won't be ready for annual plan, but maybe this year, but could in future years.
Yes, I would expect so.
Thanks, Chair.
Right. Thanks, Maxine. Councillor Ewan.
Thanks, Mark. Look, first of all, thanks for the good report, staff, Maria and Andy. My questions relate to page 83 and point 15. I'm particularly interested in getting a feel from staff on their views of, how are these groups expressing their willingness to share space and work collaboratively as opposed to silos, demanding own facilities, exclusive use. I'm really getting the sense, I'm really wanting to get the feel, are you finding, real cooperation and willingness to share?
I'd have to say, Councillor Ewan, it is a bit of a mixed bag at the moment. There are the very willing and there are the ones who have a sense of ownership. So that is going to be an ongoing piece of work, but we are embedding the kind of strategy with our play strategy and within our community occupancy, that hubbing is our preference. And through implementing this new process with the pre-screen, that's going to be one of the questions that's asked very early on. What's your capacity to share with others? And if it is a case of we just don't want to share, because there will be examples where sharing is not possible, but if it is a case of we just don't want to share, then I would suggest council doesn't invest a lot of effort.
Thank you. I'll leave the rest.
Can I just add to that to say that it is a big cultural shift that's going to take a period of time for groups to get their head around that multi-use and sharing, and also that combination of sports and community activities working together. And it's not something that's going to happen, you know, overnight or even within years. It takes a long time for groups to get away from the traditional model of thinking we each have our single purpose facility and move to a shared resources model.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, just further on to Karen and to staff. It is, though, our current modus operandi to work towards a more shared model, correct? Because these are assets funded by the ratepayer for the betterment of the entire community. Is that not our policy?
There's a mixed model, Councillor Ewan. So some of the buildings are owned by the entities, and they have a lease on the council land. Rightly or wrongly, sometimes that represents a greater sense of ownership. But you're correct, there is some wording within the lease clauses that indicates the need to share. The other point I'd make is that in terms of the state of the community facilities, some of them are fairly average, and that's to my point about the next LTP being slightly bolder and having a look at opportunities. Does council wish to build new facilities? And there's certainly some examples from Wellington, Upper and Lower Hutt, where that's been quite successful.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Good questions, I think. Good answers. Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you. I think Ewan's asked an excellent question in terms of, and can I just come back to Karen, because you talked about a period of time, but I think given that, you know, we own at least the land beneath the building, you know, surely it shouldn't take a long, long time for genuine partnership. I mean, in terms of a mindset.
I would say, unfortunately, it does take a long time. You would have seen all our conversations around the Stadium Bowling Club and just trying to get the bowling clubs to share facilities or even consider amalgamating, or not even amalgamating, but sharing that facility under their own club banners was a real struggle. And if you look, it's not a Waikato issue, though. It's New Zealand-wide clubs. It takes a long time for clubs to share or to change their model. And I know some of the facilities that Maria and Lance looked at, some of these hubs took 10 to 15 years to get off the ground. So it's a long-term and an ongoing conversation. And Sport Waikato are also influencing and pushing in this space, the same as we are. But I guess we've got that complexity of a lot of these groups own their buildings on our parks, which, although we can encourage through our policies and our leases for them to share, ultimately we're not in the building, and so we can't, you know, it's difficult for us to influence or change that unless we've got groups that are willing and ready to make those changes at a board or a committee level.
So my suggestion, Councillor Martin, is that we start by working with a coalition of the willing, and that then demonstrates to some of the others how this model could be successful.
My only concern, if you can clarify, I'm really concerned that we jump in and do a long-term 20-year lease as against a yearly rollover with the coalition of the unwilling?
So these are certainly things that we would bring to your attention at the time of the lease application. And, you know, as you know, all leases come through council. It will take, you know, as Karen said, Sport Waikato are working with us, staff and elected members working together with one kind of vision to make this all happen in our community.
I assume that any public funding of any buildings or help with any buildings, obviously that's going to be part of the dialogue as well. So at the point at which public funds go into a building or helping with a building, then at that point there will be a perception of community access.
Yes, I would expect that would be an expectation, particularly of this council, and would be embedded into any funding agreements.
Just a final question.
Can I just jump in there, Maria? Also, sorry, Councillor Martin. Just going on from that is that we also talk to the funders like Trust Waikato, Well Energy, and they're very aligned with if there's philanthropic funding going into especially new facilities, that they are hub facilities and shared facilities, and that they get priority over you know, facilities that might just have one group that wants to remain there and have no one else in there.
No, that's excellent. Obviously, good strategic thinking. Just a final question, and it relates a wee bit. For example, just taking the cadets as an example, excellent group, wonderful history in our city, and obviously we want them. Of course, we want to work with them, and they remain. In terms of how buildings relate to the reserve, their neighbouring reserve, whether it's the West Town Belt or the East Town Belt, where do our management plans fit into that? So, for example, before you did a long-term lease with any building on the East Town Belt, for example, that would be consistent with the shape of what the East Town Belt is going to look like over the next few years, over the term of that lease, and also, obviously, buildings on a reserve again, hopefully become a community facility.
Yes, and we have an opportunity to influence that slightly more with the sports. Now, it has got a very long name that has escapes me, but the reserve management plan that's currently under review, and Dan will be working very closely with this piece of work to make sure that the two things align and that the outcomes that we need are embedded in both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Appreciate that. Councillor Ryan.
Thanks, Mark. Just a couple of things following on. Councillor Martin mentioned the Cadet Hall on page 84 of our report. I noticed we still call it ATC Cadet Hall and Bomb Store. Is there an opportunity to rename that, or is it still a bomb store?
So, Councillor Ryan, those are in the asset register, two separate buildings, and that's just their asset name. So, absolutely, we can rename
that. Okay. So, where is the bomb store actually geographically located?
The bomb store is slightly just next door. Basically, it's a wee brick building. It has nothing inside it, and it's not currently leased.
Okay.
And heritage listed.
Right. Okay. Thanks. And just in terms of the suggested process on page 86, I take it that if, like, stage one register of HCC parks, if they've been previously assessed to determine whether you progress or not, if there was a unique opportunity, I suppose you would then still present that opportunity to elected members, I guess. Maria, it wouldn't.
Yeah, as per the supplementary information, that there are some sites that will be just a no. They're either just too small or they're not going to work from a regulatory and compliance point of view. But we have tried to keep that analysis broad enough, and you'll notice that there's some sites like Embassy site are included in the, could be sort of category, and that's because we don't think it's very likely that they would have a building on them, but we don't want to shut the door on that option should the unique opportunity arise.
Sure. And final question, you mentioned that reserve management plan sort of policy review that's taking place. I guess I'm just looking for an assurance that, given that in the last sort of 6 months we've we've ring-fenced and isolated from our debt to revenue the domain endowment fund of about 11 million and 8 million in cash. I think just the opportunity for us look going forward, and particularly with some items that are in PX at the moment, the opportunity to use and partner that and get that actually deployed and activated.
Yes, so we can work through the options for funding through an annual plan or 10-year plan cycle and include those options.
No, I guess that's my point, Maria, is with that, the domain endowment fund is now separate from council's debt to revenue, so it actually can operate quite nimbly outside of the annual plan and 10-year plan process. So I think there's a real opportunity there to potentially partner with some of these projects.
Yes.
We hear the chair of the Economic Development Committee's offer.
Yes.
No, he was talking about the park endowment, not the municipal one.
No, I'm happy to help you spend your money, Lance, is what I'm saying.
Jeez, that's big of you. All right, is that all you got, Ryan?
Yes, thanks.
Cool. You want to see, you've still got your hand up. Is it an old hand or is it a fresh question?
It's an old hand. Sorry, Mark.
Beauty, no problem. Manga Ollie, are you ready to go?
Thanks, Chair Mark. Yes. Hey, Maria, just with regards to the question Councillor Ryan was asking about the bomb store, that was the old munitions store, wasn't it, as part of the ammunition factory that was down that end of Day Street?
Yes, that's my understanding.
And that's got a heritage listing as well, Lance was saying?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think it has. Yeah, we'd have to check with Alice Morris, but I'm pretty certain it has of some description, not sure which classification.
Cool. Thank you, that's all.
Great. Thank you. Look, I'll just ask one final question. Maria, look, a day doesn't go by in a lot of our lives where we get approached by groups wanting space or wanting to move, etc. And we all come leaning on you. Are you well enough resourced in this space at present? Are you guys coping all right? Because you've got a lot on.
It's fair to say that Karen is quite overloaded at the moment. We are just keeping our heads above water, but again, as these pieces of work progress, I think you will see, if council wants us to be in these spaces and coordinating, you'll see some requests for resource coming.
Okay, and that could be as soon as the annual plan potentially?
Potentially, yes.
Okay, yeah, no, that's good. Thanks for the heads up on that. No other questions? Okay, well, look, it has been moved by myself, seconded by Ewan. I'm not really going to speak on it unless something compellingly silly comes up during the debate. But Ewan, or would you like to speak on it, or?
I'll be very brief. I really appreciate the work that is being done in this area. I'm really keen and support council's clear narrative that we're encouraging sharing of these facilities. I accept the technicalities when in fact some of these organisations own the brick and mortar. But the reality is this, we know these groups add huge value to our community. We're in the business of promoting Hamilton as a wonderful place to work, live and play. And at the heart of that is ensuring community get access to great hobbies, sporting opportunities. And this will occur easily and potentially provide better facilities if these organisations are prepared to share. And the days of having an exclusive use, I think, is now gone, and I would encourage the community and the groups to embrace the premise of sharing. And I think as a city, we would then be inspired to invest further in these facilities to make them state of the art.
Yep, thoroughly endorse that. No other. Ollie, are you speaking, or is that the older hand? Okay, Paula, Mayor Paula, big pardon.
That's all right. Thank you very much. Just to support the comments that Ewan made, and also this is really good work. It's a step in the right direction. I know staff are under pressure, so they can only do what they can do. But the long-term goal is to make sure that the community gets the best use of community facilities as possible, and the right facility is matched with the right need. And there are, my interest is there are a lot of groups that would willingly embark on some kind of co-funding or fundraising, but when there's no certainty in the tenure of their use of a building or a space, that's really impossible to do. And we have seen that where groups have certainty, they do invest. That's in the buildings that they have on our land or the buildings that we own. So that's what I'm aiming at, is to give them a hand up, not necessarily hand out, but a hand up to actually play a role in looking after our spaces and facilities for us as well. So, but the team are doing a really good job. We've actually, this isn't an indictment on them, because what we're actually seeing is that Hamilton owns a number of really ageing facilities that haven't kept pace with what's required for modern activities. And that's just the way it is. And I dare say that's the way it is all the way up and down the country as well. So that's where my thinking is, as you know, Mark, because we've had this chat a number of times. But thanks to staff for all the work you're doing.
Great stuff. Thank you, Paula. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, look, a very excellent report. You know, can I say the obvious, that if a group, a la like the Rivoli Theatre, has its own freehold land, it does exactly what it wants. It's on private property. But the point at which a group locates a building in any form on a public realm, i.e. a reserve land, then in return for a peppercorn rental on public reserve, then obviously the quid pro quo must be those groups having an outward-looking approach in terms of, you know, community use and community interaction. But I think the debate and the questions have been excellent, and thank you to Karen and the others of the team for the great work you're doing.
Really good. Thank you, Martin. Thank you for your comments, councillors. Look, I'll just very quickly sum it up and say, agreed. Thank you for the work. I am concerned about the workload that you're under at the moment, because you are doing, you know, 2 committees working there at this point. So, Lance, I hope your ears have pricked up on that, because the more preemptive, proactive and preventative work you do now with our policies, the less you're going to have to feel the strain later on. And it is like a funnel. We all just pour down upon you guys. And the future ain't what it used to be as well. There are groups out there who are really willing to join up, like the wood turners and men's sheds, etc. And we have to sit through these, you know, long processes with them. But if we've got those facilities moving on with the times and actually anticipating what's going to happen in the future, because who would have predicted the demise of bowling to the point that it's at the moment? Who would have predicted, you know, scout groups needing to share facilities? So the better the work you do, the better system we'll have for our community. So I'm fully supportive of any resource that we can add to you there. All right, so the report has been received, let's receive the report rather. Yep, that's the recommendation. Those in favour, show of hands, please. Those against?
Carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. Right. Okay, let's move on to the General Manager's report. Lance, it's all yours. Team, the intention is we'll hopefully plough on in this next session and get the rest of the stuff in this meeting done. So if everyone's happy with that, just to set your stomachs to that. Okay, cool. All right, Paula, your hand's still up, but Lance, the floor is yours.
There's going to be a few people helping me with this, with the hours on the libraries. I'm not sure if Stephen Henruss goes there. Sorry, I can't see the list of participants.
I'm here, Lance.
Oh, hi, Stephen. So I might just get Stephen to just run you through. We've had a briefing on this, just the proposed change of hours. So Stephen, maybe if you can just give a bit of an overview of that. I think most elected members who managed to make the briefing will be well aware and versed in our rationale, but if you can give us a bit of a highlight of that and then answer any elected member questions, that'd be great. Thanks very much.
Certainly. Kia ora tātou, elected members, mangai Māori. So yes, we have undertaken a review of the library's opening hours. We undertook customer survey over 8 months and asked them what hours would best suit their needs. Unsurprisingly, we heard that weekends are the best time to come and use the library, particularly afternoons. For example, Saturday morning is school sports, and our current hours don't support the community needs. We also know through our detailed user analysis data of door counts that Central Library is not being utilised as good as it could Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Friday. So the proposal before you is that we redistribute some of those staffing resources, align our hours across the network, because at the moment we have a myriad of different hours. Some libraries open at 9 o'clock on a Saturday, others at 10, others at 9:30, that kind of thing. So the hours in the proposal look to create a much easier to understand and better distributed hours of service. And I think the key thing here is that we are doing this within our current resourcing. Unfortunately, there's no savings that we can offer up, but we're not asking for any further contributions to make this happen. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, well, let's take questions just on that item, if that's all right with you, Lance, just on the library thing. Any questions around just the library at this point? Sarah, is your question around the library? Yep, go ahead. Councillor Sarah.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks, Stephen. I just have a question, I guess. Obviously, we're working within a specific funding pocket or bucket. What feedback did you receive in terms of St Andrews, Glenview, Dinsdale, Hillcrest around the desire to have those open on the weekend or on Saturday afternoon?
So the majority of the feedback we received from the community was around Central and Chartwell. The adjustments that we've made for this proposal look to ever so slightly tweak the smaller libraries. If we wanted to have a bigger offering, we would probably need to come back for further resourcing. So this exercise was, what can we do to meet the community's request for better weekend access without costing anything?
Thank you. Yeah. No, I think, I guess where I was going was, I was just interested if we're looking forward, I mean, probably to the next long-term plan, really. But if we're wanting to continue to improve the utilisation of our libraries and have that alignment in opening hours, I'm just wondering what value we would get from having those weekend opening hours at those kind of neighbourhood or community libraries, and whether you would get this. Obviously, they're not as popular as Chartwell, and well, they don't seem to be as popular as Chartwell and Central, but just interested in what worth you think that's there, or if it's not going to be, the same kind of uptake as though.
Yeah. So we can, ahead of the next long-term plan, continue to survey our customers and find out what we can do to activate and make accessible better hours at the smaller branches. You're right in saying that Chartwell and Central are the two workhorses of our network. So the majority of issues come from those branches, and the potential for activating and programming those spaces, which is one of the things we're committing to do if we're able to get these new hours.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it's a conversation to have.
Continued conversation with the community.
Yeah,
cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. I've got Councillor Maxine, then Mayor Paula. So, Max.
Hi, Stephen. Thanks for that. I note in your consultation that Daryl and Jessica from the PSA were right at the top of the list, and I think that it's really helpful to have the union involved in this process. The staff welfare was something that I was concerned about, and just wondered whether we have a permanent workforce in our libraries, or do we use a fixed term and temporary workers to help to staff them?
So we have a permanent workforce. We, through this proposal, have looked at what the rostering would look like, and we are able to safely fulfill all of the proposed hours from our existing set of hours. The reason we engaged with the union was just to keep them informed of what we were thinking of doing. It does change the hours of working for some staff, but is within everyone's employment contract. So.
And my assumption is that you've had the chance to also communicate with the staff about their willingness to change their hours as well. Were there any staff that have reduced hours through that process at all?
No, no one's losing out. In fact, so the general consensus from staff was incredibly favourable. They understood that this was meeting a community need. To meet the hour requirement, we did say there is an opportunity to swap hours. You know, this person and this person might want to swap hours or pick up some additional hours. Currently, we have quite a few vacancies at the library, though I'm pleased to say we've just recruited about 10 new staff in the last month. COVID has meant that it's very hard to employ people at the moment. And what we're able to do with the vacancies that we are filling is to create contracts that fulfill the new proposed hours.
Great, that's excellent. Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks, Maxine. Mayor Paula.
Thank you. Hiya. Just out of interest, and I don't want to sort of open up a can of worms, but with the Central Library, has there been any feedback from, because it did really well when it reopened and everybody was very happy. Of course, then we've had COVID and other things. Do we get any feedback from people as to why, or do we know why they're choosing less to come into the Central Library? Is it because people are not coming in, you know, working from home more? Is it because of some of the perceived safety issues in Garden Place? Or I know that's coming up next. I'm not going to go there.
Reasonably wide of the mark, Paula, but I'll let this one sort of slide through.
Why people are not choosing to walk in. There's lots more people living in inner city and going to. I'm asking, why? Do we know, or do we just know the numbers are down? We haven't gone into the why or wherefore. That's all.
So the short answer is no, we don't have specific answers to why there is a drop-off. But just to be clear, we're talking about a drop-off of hours after 5:30. So Central Library is still a bustly library during the day.
Cool.
Observationally, with COVID, the central city workforce ebb and flow with people working from home. I wonder if that has an element in the reduction. But the analysis of hours that we did was over a whole year. So we haven't just taken like the winter months and said no one comes of an evening. It is just a drop-off of visitors over an evening from 5:30.
Thank you.
Great stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Appreciate that. Any other questions on the libraries, or should we move on to your next item in there, Lance? Nope. Okay. All yours, Lance.
Trading in public places policy, the investigation into economic impacts. You see from the report that there's only been one event with food trucks. So Kelvin's view is that there isn't really enough sufficient information to bring forward a study into those economic impacts, and suggesting that we just defer that for another 12 months. And then hopefully we'll have some, we just think that's common sense, come back with some, a bit more robust information.
Cool.
Be hard to draw any conclusions from one event.
Yeah, Councillor Ryan, that was your desire, wasn't it, that we come back with that information last time? So you happy for that?
Yeah, Kelvin rang me about that. It makes sense. So I'm not going to lose sleep over that at all.
Sweet.
In fact, I think it was going to cost $10,000 to commission a report on one food truck, so it was nonsensical.
Yeah. And the next one, I'll just get Andy Mannering to give us a bit of an update on the Citizens Advice Bureau, which councillors will remember that when they were having their roof redone in their Victoria Street premises, they moved into the right-hand side of the council customer service centre as you walk into the municipal building.
Could a councillor?
Andy, are you there? Yep.
Yes, yep. Thanks, Lance. Thanks, councillors. Just as the report kind of says, there was real positive benefits, both deemed from our customer services team and the Citizens Advice Bureau team. They really enjoyed being able to bounce things quite quickly and respond to a myriad of different things that kind of arose. Ultimately, Vicky and the crew don't think that a permanent presence is needed right now, but they're really open to continue to explore how that mobile clinic could look like as new initiatives happen around the city. And so the conversation is one that's still live in terms of how do we continue to work really well with the team at Citizen Advice to ensure that our community has good access to really needed advocacy and information. So kia ora team.
Cool. Can I just ask a question on that one? Or Paula, is that an old hand up there at the moment? Is it? Okay, look, I'll leap in. I don't want to see us get to a situation as we got into last time. Are the discussions around the possibility of some sort of service agreement still going, or where are we at with that?
Yeah, the Citizens Advice Bureau are one of a number of our community groups who are really keen to investigate what a service level agreement rather than a contestable funding model looks like. So that is work that will take place in line of, obviously our contestable grants through our multi-year fund is locked in with this 10-year plan. So during the lead up to the next 10-year plan, we'll make sure that we're involved in the appropriate conversations around contestable funding versus service level agreements.
Okay, reasonably general. I just don't want to find ourselves in that same trap. So I just want to be assured that the conversation
it's a live conversation. It is a live conversation, Mark.
Got it, Andy. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions on that? Because otherwise I will move that suite of recommendations with the general manager's report, and that is that we receive the report, just looking around the corner here, approve the changes to the library hours, as I identified there, and defer the trading in public places investigation until December 2022. So we'll move that as a suite. Do we have a seconder for that?
Yeah.
Councillor Sarah, thank you. And thanks, Rob and Nolly, for your offer. All right, so any debate? I'm not going to debate any of it. Sarah, you'd like to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that while in an ideal world, we would be open both in evenings and weekends for the library, I'm actually really excited about this change because I think it sounds like it's going to better serve our community in terms of having that availability, particularly for people with families who might not actually see their kids during the week that much, and then they have the weekend available to go to the library. I'll be really keen to see how it's received and what happens in terms of visitor numbers. And if we do see a really positive uptake, then I think it would be worth looking at those other community branch libraries as well in the future to see if we can extend those weekend hours a little bit more too. But just want to say thank you for that work because, I think it's a step in the right direction.
Okay, look, I'll just sum it up very, very quickly. Say, Stephen, apart from the fact that every time I look at you on Zoom, you look remarkably like me, and that is a compliment, not an insult, you guys are doing a terrific job. We're very, very proud of, I'm very, very proud of the work the libraries are doing. You're constantly evolving, really excited about what Rotatuna Library is going to look like in the future, and very supportive of what you're doing. So thank you, and thanks, Lance, for your report. So all those in favour, show of hands, please. Anybody again?
Carried unanimously.
Good stuff. Now, the final item on this is item 9, which is the Central City Safety Strategy update. Now, we were expecting to have Inspector Macbeth join us and speak to this one. Governance, where are we at with that at this point?
Chair Mark, if I could just give an update, I have been having ongoing texts with Andrea this morning. She is still in the meeting with her district commander and is not able to be freed at this time.
Okay, all right. Well, I certainly don't want to take a lunch break, come back for this. So
No.
if you're happy, we'll plough on then. Well, it's a shame, actually. It's a shame because she adds a lot to these meetings. Not that you don't, of course, Calvin. All right. Well, in that case, Okay, received the report. Looking at, I'll move the staff recommendation, but I will foreshadow there's going to be a note to the meeting about some action we'd like to take, but not to the point of putting it in the resolution. And that is, there's been a lot of talk. We had a really good briefing recently about the state of city safety, and I think this is the appropriate place to bring it up, that Mayor Paula's got a great relationship with the police at this point, and the police need to be definitely leading any work in city safety. But I'd like to propose that we put a working group together to see how we could, as a council, better support the police by bringing in the agencies. Councillor Angela's worked very hard to get a memo of understanding, which we've just about got all signed off. It's a bit like cat herding, but it's been very useful to get everybody in the same tent. And I think it'd be good to do a bit of set up a bit of a working group. And I'd like the mayor to pretty much lead it. I'd like to support her in that, and I think it'll be appropriate to have the deputy mayor in his capacity as Central City, and any other councillors who would like to come and join that work. Now, I don't want it to be
Chair. What about Councillor Donovan? Councillor Donovan,
yeah, absolutely.
Given his neighbourhood portfolio.
Yep, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. I'll leave the door open for people who want to come along, and if it gets more heavy in weight, we'll bring it back to the next community meeting to get some terms of references, etc. But I don't anticipate this being as big and weighty as even something like the Central City Group. But I just think it'd be good to get a few of us around the table with the police and with the other agencies. Mayor Paula, does that pretty much go along with your thinking?
Yes, kind of, very close. Thank you for that. And just to acknowledge that, in fact, all of the councillors for the last few months have been talking very much in the space of safety. So this is something that we all share in common. We had that really good meeting with Inspector Macbeth the other day, and good conversation. Now, what I heard from that is that a task force was the word that she said at one point. And I do think about that. I just think in the meantime, it might be worth having a one meeting to begin with, to see who's interested and to see what the structure should be. I'd like to hear from the police because they are a lead in crime prevention. I'd like to hear from them as to what the best structure might be. And we might not necessarily be the lead agency, we might be the partner. But I absolutely support the multi-agency approach at this time. Thank you, Angela, for getting the MOU done. I know lots of things stood in the way of that to begin with. Yeah, so a multi-agency task force group, not necessarily run by the City Council, but certainly partnered by us, is kind of where I'm heading. But in the meantime, I thought your idea was to have some kind of broad workshop and nut that out with the key players. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's pretty much bang on. So I'm asking governance just to sort of take a meeting note on that, and and we'll come back after we've worked out, because we just don't want to reinvent the wheel. So I'll be, door is open to everybody. Obviously, Angela, you've got a lot of knowledge in this space because you've worked on it for many, many years. So I'll be encouraging you to get involved too. So, but I don't want to sort of burden everybody down and make it bigger than it needs to be either. So just trying to run that balance. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Taylor, you've got a hand up there.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, I concur with everything that's just been said about a task force. Is this an opportunity to ask questions of the report?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Calvin, I've kind of jumped in all over you there. So, Calvin, did you want to speak to it or first and then ask questions?
Andy's report, I think he'll start, and I will answer anything which is more pointed towards some of the crime stuff, I suspect.
Yeah, good point. Sorry about that. Got all carried away. Andy, it's over to you.
Councillors, just really the report is something that we've delivered every year for the last few years. Make the note that the current Central City Safety Strategy has run its term, and with the refresh and the adoption of the revised Central City Transformation Plan, the aspects of people feeling safe and loving being in the Central City has all been wrapped up in those outcomes that have been a part of that transformation plan. So we haven't done the work over the last year with you to create a new strategy because of the work that the Central City Transformation Plan has done. But really happy to answer any kind of questions. I know that the Central City and River Plan Advisory Panel. There were some questions around demographics, so we've done some of those data sets, and we can answer any questions that you might have pertaining to different people that we are using in the city as well. But kia ora.
Cool. Kia ora, thank you. Now, Councillor Deputy Mayor Taylor, sorry, mate.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure if my question's appropriate for now. It's more of a practical kind of hands-on question about CitySafe's operation in the central city. Is this the time for it or not?
Yep, no, go for it. We're going to open the door now anyway, so go ahead, Calvin. I presume this is to you.
Yeah, it's probably to Calvin. Calvin, I'm just trying to get, it's quite relevant to this, the way CitySafe operates, and in particular in regards to issues around Pack and Save, around Mill Street, and the issues that they're having there. And there was an issue yesterday where someone got assaulted in the supermarket yet again, and police were there when I was there. And the issue that has been raised with me is that CitySafe say that they will patrol maybe twice a day, but they won't get out of cars at the supermarket. And I'm just trying to get an understanding of where CitySafe is drawing the line on these things, because that was news to me.
I'm wondering, Deputy Mayor, if people are slightly mixed with our alert levels. At alert level 4, CitySafe is not operating. At alert level 3, they operate as a mobile two-person patrol only, and with some strict protocols around engagement with people. It's not until we revert to alert level 2 that we start having person-to-person interactions.
Right. So once we get to 2, they can get out of the car.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
They'd be expected to as well.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair. Just one other question, if I could, Chair. Just in regard to the transport centre, which seems to be a trouble spot in the central city, we were having issues with people on free buses at one point, and the impact that they were having. Is that still occurring, do we know? Or has that died away, or have we done something about that?
From a CitySafe perspective, it is certainly not on our radar at the moment. That's not to say it's not occurring. It's certainly not one that's been brought to us.
Okay. All right. I guess it's one once the police are in the room to have a chat about too. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, and again, I think you just sort of spoken to the reason for this group, where we can have these dialogues and say, right, where are the hotspots? What can we be doing as a city agencies? Great, thank you. Councillor Maxine.
Thanks, Chair. I guess to Andy, really, I raised this question in the workshop that we had regarding our community support groups and the comms, etc., that might go to them on a semi-regular basis, maybe even quarterly, to talk about initiatives that the city was taking up, handy hints, or some personal responsibility. Is that something that could be investigated by you and your team in conjunction with comms?
Yeah, absolutely. We, in terms of all of council media, we leverage the relationships we have with our community groups. And I know that talking with neighbourhood support, they're really strict that they don't want their database to just be used for spam. So it's not a matter of us being able to send everything them that they'll send to all of their members, but there are really key messages and some really key parts of our calendar that I think are really pertinent to the residents and the people who are part of our neighbourhood support membership. So we're definitely able to engage in that conversation and understand what's going to be useful for them to pass on and what's really beneficial for us in terms of doing that all of us together approach.
I'm just thinking, especially in times of high crime or high profile crime, it's an opportunity to put some of that into perspective, and to certainly when we're doing perception surveys, it doesn't always match what a reality is, and can that be something that we can use as a useful tool in there, but also maybe through our Antenno app as a receptacle to be able to get that information out as well?
Yes.
It's a yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maxine.
Thanks,
Good question.
Chair.
Mayor Paula.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Oh God, there you go.
You haven't paid your power bill, have you?
I have. There we go. Just in respect of your view, Calvin, because we had a really good conversation with Inspector Macbeth, and she's always very open and genuine about working with us. From your perspective, in terms of City Safe and the council, and Andy, and the role of the council in this, what kind of greater resources would help us, or what would be the next set of improvements for us as an organisation, given that we can't fix everything and that the police are the lead crime prevention agency? What can we do you think? Or where do you see the big pressures, problems?
That's a fairly big question, Mayor Paula. I think if I just break it down into a couple of smaller parts. The first one is something that Councillor Maxine just talked on, and that's our comms and engagement. And that is, what does our messaging look like to our community? Can we lead some of those engagements better than we have, so that people can actually understand or get some alternate messaging that they can actually have to consider? So this is around, what are the initiatives? What are some hints? What do they need to be wary of? But at the same stage, it's also about making sure that we are clear on what that message content is. It's one of the things I've noted, and it came out in this year's survey, and it's come out in a couple of previous ones. There is a negative reaction whenever there is a high-profile event. For example, and we had more than one event at the Transport Centre which drew some attention. And in hindsight, our ability to get in and leverage some conversation after those to provide a level of surety to our community, I think was a matter that we lost. So we can keep adding bodies on the street in a city safe. I'm not sure that that's actually ultimately going to bring about the change that we're looking for.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Your question out there for the moment, Paula?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. Calvin. Yeah, cool. Right, okay. I think you know what question's coming here from me. This is a perception study, so how people feel, and I ask you this pretty much every year. Have we got a way of marrying up the way people feel about how safe they are with what's actually going on with reported crime in the city?
We can run I guess an overlay with actual crime versus perceptions, although I'm not sure that that's a particularly valid thing, because this is about people are only as safe as they feel, regardless of what the crime rate is. And I understand, which we've had this conversation previously, previous councils have been focused on us actually looking at perception study, and because the perception study is what actually is driving the behaviours to either be in or stay away from the central city. And so it's not necessarily the fact that there is a crime or that they are at an increased likelihood of being a victim of a crime. It's the fact that they believe that.
Right. Okay. So when you see like a big article in Stuff, for example, recently of the results of this perception study, do you think it's useful in any way, shape or form? Because to me, it just seems the headline seems to scream the place isn't safe anymore. Now, that doesn't necessarily marry up with crime figures. And like you say, there's a lot of context when it comes down to, we're in COVID, there's been some ram raids, there's been some scraps at the centre, etc. And as a result, of course, people are going to feel unsafe. Now we're stuck with this data and it doesn't necessarily help anybody. So how useful is it in its present sense?
It's as useful as the councillors want it to be, insofar as when we first went down this track, there was a desire for us to have some form of a reporting mechanism, one of which was the crime rate, one of which was the perception. So one is about saying, actually, on this axis, we have just the actual crime, and over here we have a separate of this is how people are telling us they feel. Now, the two for me serve slightly separate purposes, but I still think they are both valid.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
The same reason that the Quality of Life Survey, which is the bi-yearly survey, which is done across the top 8 councils in the country, or the 8 largest in the country, is also a perceptions survey. So if we start moving away from perceptions, our ability to measure against others starts to be eroded.
And if I could just add, Calvin, traditionally we've had a one point in time perception survey as opposed to, a real life kind of response. We're currently engaged with quality of life providers to do 6 monthly pulse surveys. So we're asking safety perception surveys in that to give a little bit more of a less than once a year. So we've got a twice a year kind of look to it. But it is very hard to actually go on a real life basis. Crime happens, and therefore that's the perception response.
All right. Okay, thank you. And final question, how easy would it be, and it's probably something I want to bring to this group, how easy would it be to spread the scope of this to the kind of people? In other words, why we're just asking people to go into town at the moment. How easy would it be to ask people who aren't going into town why they're actually not going into town and how safe they feel? Couching that with the fact that, the ram raids and the likes have been in the suburbs, the dairies are in the suburbs. They're the ones that are really feeling it at the moment. Sorry, Calvin, you go.
As part of the current survey, one of the questions was around visitation. And one of there were two points to that. The first part was around for the 5% of respondents who didn't come into town, and they gave a list of their rationale, which was lack of parking, availability of other options at other locations like the base in Chartwell, that they had no requirement to visit the central city, that there was a presence of window washers at the over by the Ulster Street, and there was emergency social housing tenants in the inner city areas, and that was impacting on their reasons for not coming into the central city. Then there was those who actually commented about the lack of people in the central city and the reduction in foot traffic.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And just to finalise, so we open up the survey to everybody, and Calvin's comment there of the 5% who respond who don't come to the CBD. It's a relatively small number of people who self-select into the survey that don't come and, whether they shop, work, live, do things in the central city. Yeah. So it is wide. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I would catch the fact that you're only doing what I've asked you to do. So, certainly not being critical of your work. It's, you're asking the questions that we've asked you to ask. So, Deputy Mayor, you've got your hand up. Is it still from a previous?
I'm sorry, it's an old hand.
I'm an old hand, yes. Okay, great. All right. Well, look, we have, with governance, you've noted the creation of a meeting. And there is just as a meeting note. So I've moved that we received the report and note that the goals, objectives, and just trying to see it, ongoing monitoring of measures within Central City safety have been incorporated into the Central City Safety Transformation Plan.
Second that, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. Look, I'll open this up and say, look, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to work out that we're in very tense times at the moment, and there is more I think we can do without actually trying to do the police's job for them, and it's something I think we should be constantly monitoring and constantly trying to improve, and that is the well-being, which is probably one of the biggest well-beings of all of our residents, and that is the safety. My concern has always been with perception studies. We're not here to monitor the perception of well-being. We're here to monitor the well-being. And I kind of feel at the moment, with certainly no disrespect to the staff and people who have been doing exactly what we've asked them to do, is that a perception study on crime is about as effective as on crime as trying to stop them with a cotton bud. It's we get how people feel about it, but it's not enough at this point. I think we can be doing more. So I want to really have a good crack at it, see how we can support the police. We talk with the police. Everyone knows that the MPs will hold a community meeting and everyone will bang drums, etc. Everyone will get, and the poor old MPs will get harassed for not opening up community police stations, etc. But we can do better than that. We can work creatively with our communities, with our patrols, with everybody who's involved in this kind of thing, but primarily support the police, because for heaven's sakes, there's only one Craig Berquist and he's doing brilliant work out there with the neighbourhood watch stuff. How can we support him in that neighbourhood watch stuff with our contacts in our system? So thanks, Angela, for the great work you've done on the MOU. I think it's a fantastic start. So yeah, happy to move. I've got Mayor Paula, then Deputy Mayor Jeff.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for bringing this work forward off the back of a number of conversations, and thank you, Angela, to the work that you did in setting up the foundation of looking at what we could do in partnership with others. Of course, you got to feel disappointed when you hear that people of our city don't feel safe. Our perception becomes reality, even though we acknowledge that the reality might not be what people perceive. We still want people to feel safe. However, I think City Safe do a fantastic job, and they can't do the job of the police anyway. The solution to this is in the hands of all of us, and I mean the whole community, and that's not just in the central city, but wider afield in some of the community areas where we're seeing some unpleasant activity occurring, ram raids and the like. We need to get behind and support the police. We need to get the structure that works best with the police because they are the lead agency. But we do need to help facilitate and bring together a multi-agency group, not just to sit around talking about it, however, because we've done that. We've all been talking about this for lots of months. We want to do something now. I have to say the police have very stretched resources. And if there's a way I can support them with messages to government, to the ministry, to the minister and so on, I'm happy to do that, and I will, because I think it's quite possible that we need a little bit more resourcing here in the Waikato and Hamilton. In terms of working groups, this has to be a tactical group. It has to be for the purposes of identifying our role, the role of other organisations, the role of shop owners, public, everyone plays a part. And I'm really excited about what we can achieve when we work together. Another key partner we haven't mentioned in this conversation is the University of Waikato, who have criminologists, who have people who do SIPTED, and they specialise in understanding and reacting and preventing crime. And I'd like to get them in the loop. I know they're very willing. I spoke with them the other day and they are very willing. So first step is to get around the table and decide what structure we're going to put in place to start really actively tackling the issues we're seeing in our community, so that hopefully in another year we can have a better perception survey result. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you. Sorry, I forgot to start the timer on that one. So Deputy Mayor Jeff Wah.
I'm sure I came up 2 seconds under Mark.
Yeah, that were my calculations too, yeah.
Right, well, that's 10 seconds of my time gone now. Okay, I won't take long. Hey, yeah, look, it is disappointing to get these results, and with my central city interest, I find it disappointing. I got a gleeful email from my brother who lives in Levin this morning, reading out the story to me, and he was pleased to see that some of the heat was coming off his part of the country and going into Hamilton. And Mark's right that in essence, it's based on not something so tangible. It's based on more of a feeling, and yet there is reality there. I mean, I've been told in the last couple of days that crime stats in the central city are well up. 17% was the figure given to me. And the central city is an issue, but actually the whole city is an issue at the moment. I think we've got a citywide problem at the moment. The city as a whole is being targeted. The suburbs are being targeted, and we should be worried because our residents are worried. And there's a whole hunk of reasons for this happening. In terms of the central city, the strategy was good, and we were able to implement elements of it into the CCTP refresh. Top of mind, I think, for me, out of all this is design of our public spaces going forward. You know, the SIPTED element of it. We've got 2 key public spaces which we're developing. One is down by the river around the theatre, pedestrian bridge, museum, etc. And the other is the Greentown Belt area, our mini Central Park around Founders, etc. We want people, we need these areas to be special because we want people to be lingering in town. So we've got to ensure that the work we do in designing these public spaces is absolutely bang on in terms of making them safe places for people to be. Otherwise, it just defeats the purpose. So I think that's a big taking from me out of this, that we've just got to make sure that's top of mind in the way we design these places. And I also think of elements such as the HCBA's push for fresh street furniture in the central city in Garden Place. You know, if Garden Place's street furniture looked like Victoria on the river, that would probably, you know, that would help perceptions. So we need to really accelerate that sort of public realm design guide and get some consistency as quick as we can. Look, and I agree. I also, the other thing I think is critical mass in the central city. Once you get more and more people living there, then it feels a safer place to be. But I agree, a task force of some type is a way to go, as long as it's not just a bunch of councillors talking about it. It's got to be all the other agencies led by the police. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. Councillor Angela.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. First of all, I think what I would want to say is the memorandum of understanding is not what everybody is talking about here. That is something that is separate to the central city safety and separate really to safety in general. That is about, or was about, whether you go ahead with it or not, an agreement between the City Safe team, police, and the community groups like the night owls that patrol the residential streets, and keeping them together and sharing information. It certainly wasn't a broad city safety strategy. What I'm hearing from elected members' comments is that a broad city safety strategy might come out of this task force. Now, Hamilton has never had one of those. And maybe it's time for that. The task force will decide. But I think it's time. I think the central city safety measures I think they've had their time. They served the first and the second central city safety plan that we've done, and I think it was good that the actions are being picked up through the central city transformation plan. So I think we shouldn't worry about that, and we should look citywide. I would just caution that we don't repeat or don't lose the great work that's been done by this organisation, by the staff since 2014. You know, the whole safety as an issue for me anyway, started with the psychoactive substances, and we've learnt a lot around that. The biggest thing that council can influence is the antisocial behaviour aspect. So that is about having good lighting and deterring antisocial behaviour, which has the negative impact on community. I want to push back on the perception issue. If you asked any woman in the city today, right now, whether she feels safe walking down the street, that is a perception, because it's subjective. While a man walking down a particular residential area might feel safe, a woman on her own might not. So don't discount perception, because it is the feeling of being safe by an individual. And you know, someone who's done martial arts for 20 years is going to feel safer on a street than someone who hasn't. So it is about perception. I also think that there's a lot to learn from other cities, and I have seriously folders and folders of other cities, particularly in Australia. They have some fascinating safety strategies, and I'm going to give that to a new councillor, because like we're talking 7 or 8 years of research and stuff working with this issue. So look, I'm going to give that to Mark Donovan. And there's a lot of really valuable stuff in my notes. And I just want to thank Calvin because I'm stepping away from this. I want to pick up the Access Hamilton review, and that's going to be a lot of hard work. But Calvin is amazing. His team is amazing. And I've really, really enjoyed my 7 or 8 years journey in this space, and wish the task force all the best. And I'll be watching.
and you know, Angela, you do supply cake when you say thank you to people. Just
Apparently, yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Good words. Councillor Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, I also want to thank Andy, Calvin and their teams. We've come, as Angela has mentioned, we've come a long way since 2014. Over the last week or 10 days, I've been quite concerned about the increase in crime in Hamilton. It appears, certainly over this short period of time, that the police helicopter is almost permanently stationed in Hamilton as it flies over my place every time it comes into town and leaves. I appreciated Calvin's comments suggesting an answer to address city safety is not to simply add further staff, because I've long held the concern that it would be relatively easy for Hamilton City Council to fund city safety when much of the role is the responsibility of central government through its funding of the police force. We heard last week from Commander Macbeth that the police are under-resourced, and we could easily, in a situation that we're in at the moment, become the fill-up for this by asking ratepayers to fund and resource this police shortfall in resources. So I'm hopeful that the elected member-led task force would carefully canvass all of these issues, and in partnership with the police and with the community, get some really good, efficient outcomes without further adding costs to city ratepayers.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate that. No other speakers. Look, I'll just wrap this up. Thank you. And I'll just say thanks very much to the staff and previous councils and councillors who have put such great work into this. And yes, we are community leaders in this space. But just as we move on, so does crime, and it gets harder, it gets faster, and it changes all the time. So I'm really excited about the kind of work we can do in this. It behoves us to provide our citizens with the safest city in the land. It's as simple as that. They deserve nothing less. They pay us good money to make these decisions and to do this work. And I like the fact that Mayor Paula has made the point very clearly that it's not up to us to lead this work. It's up to us to support the agencies who should. So yeah, with that in mind, expect some great stuff to come out. Expect advocacy from us to the powers that be to better resource our local police rather than filling in, as Rob says, for them. Expect us to have a look at our regulations. Do we make it too hard for dairies to put their own bollards in? You know, are we doing that as nimbly as we possibly can? Are we doing everything we can with our design? Those are the sort of discussions we need to have. And again, it's in how we fit in with the big scene of those who are willing to prevent crime. But you know, I don't resile from the fact that I think I don't share the view that that Calvin brought up earlier on, that people are as safe as they feel they are. I think they're two very, very different things. And while perception studies have their role, I think we can affect it a little bit more with a bit more discussion now. So again, let's give these residents the environment they deserve. And really excited about the next stage of this. And the door is open. Mark, I look forward to you reading all Angela's folders. And don't get buried. Good luck. And yeah, I'm looking forward to your contribution to the group in particular. So, mate. So, with that in mind, we will vote on the staff recommendation, which I've moved. Do we have a seconder for that? It was Paula, wasn't it? Yep. Thank you. So, all those in favour, show of hands. Fantastic. Good stuff. And against?
Was that you, Councillor McPherson? Just to confirm.
No, just
okay.
You're for or against, Dave? 4.
Thank you.
Yep, it's 4.
Carried unanimously.
Thank you. And look, hey, look
We're
at that.
going to let out a roar, are you, Mark?
Well, I was just going to say, look, in this meeting, we have decided that we're going to be the most age-friendly, retirable city and safest city. So I think this has been a pretty darn good meeting, actually. So thanks, everybody, for your contributions today. Nice to get away before lunch. Yeah, really good stuff. So we'll declare the meeting closed at 11 minutes to 1. Thank you, team, for your work.
Well done.
Yeah.